Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. I think it's Tuesday. The days have just been blurring into days, and sometimes have to look at your phone or look at something else to tell what day of the week it is. At least I do on my end because it's been so busy in the workshop, jumping from one project to another, and oftentimes having multiple projects going at the same time. So it makes for a very, very crazy pace. And I sometimes have to just pause and take a deep breath and say, okay, all right, let's slow down. And that's kind of our opportunity when we do these live streams, is to slow down a little bit and to get ready to learn some new things and to share things as well in the live chat. So it's great to come in like we normally do and just celebrate another great machine. You'll see Umi is out, and those of you that are brand new to the channel, if you don't know what an Umi is, an Umi is my little friend in the workshop that represents the machines that have their roots in Japan. And this particular machine, the same owner for about, she got it back in the mid 1970s. And it really, other than general oiling, and this owner shared with me that back in the day when she got this machine, the philosophy that she adopted, and she doesn't remember exactly where she got it from necessarily. I'll let her speak more to that because she's actually in the workshop today with us, brought the machine from Minnesota, the great state of Minnesota, Viking country. And she said back in the day, what she adopted was you oil the machine to a point where you literally need a towel underneath it. You flood the thing with oil, and then you let it set so that when it's not going to be in use, maybe, who knows, during the summer, winter, whenever, and then that oil will slowly, in the thinking, wick away, and then the machine will be ready to use. She realizes now, after watching a lot of live streams, and also helping to lead a lot of live streams as well, that over oiling a machine can be as detrimental as under oiling a machine, because the oil continues to migrate around that machine inside. It can create issues with electrical. It can create a number of other issues with that oil pooling. And then when that oil pools, it develops into a clumpy mess and then eventually into varnishing. And it actually creates the binding of those machine parts. So it's one of those things. More is not always better. So I always say, when you're oiling, do it conservatively, but do it on a regimen, do it on a frequent basis, so that you get into a habit of maintaining the machine properly, so that once it's running well, that it continues to run well and it runs with the greatest amount of ease possible. You don't want a machine to run labored, because it causes all kinds of issues and complications with that machine. So some of you may have already connected the dots and already figured out who our special guest in the workshop is today. It's none other than Susie, who you see pop up in the live chats all the time. And in fact, she's the one that we're all trying to beat into the classroom. In fact, Teresa's husband, Tim, gave it a really good effort today, almost for Susie, but she was a little bit too quick. She's got some incredible, fast, nimble fingers from a lifetime of working on computers and typing and a variety of other things like that. So we're going to have to get up with the chickens and the goats and everything else and wait for that little blip to come on saying the live stream is getting ready to come on, and get ready to type that first little comment in to beat her. But it's going to be an uphill battle because she is quicker than a hiccup. She's quicker than a hiccup. So, but really what we're going to try to accomplish in this live stream today, both for Susie's benefit and for others that will be in attendance and maybe watch this later as a video, is opening people's eyes to these service opportunities. I refer to it in the live stream as, what does it look like to have a real spa day, a real spa day for a sewing machine. Get it to that point where you can begin to get it back to that point of greatness again, where it's operating with a silky smoothness and it's able to navigate those sewing waters without any difficulty, without any hindrance. And Susie and I had a little bit of fun uh, early today, and I showed her this stethoscope right here that I picked up at Harbor Freight, and it's got a special little sensitivity wand on the end, almost like a magic wand. And when you put these in your ears like a stethoscope, and then you touch this to the surface of the sewing machine, it magnifies the operating sounds deep inside of that machine. So if you're listening to that machine running and you're hearing, say, a clicking sound, or you're hearing something that sounds like maybe it's rubbing on something, or it's just not turning with a great deal of fluidity, you can put these on and listen in closely into that machine, way, way deep into the machine, and pinpoint that area that you want to target. So we might use these a little bit today. I might give them the Susie as well, because as we ran her machine a little bit, we could hear some of those sounds a little bit. I call them cries of help. They're cries of help where the machine is saying things are not completely right, but with some workshop magic and some TLC and some targeted servicing and deep cleaning, we'll be able to get rid of those sounds or at least lessen them. Again, this machine is from the mid 1970s, and it's been operating fast and furious and hard for almost all of those 50 years. Um, Susie hasn't beat around the bush at all in putting this machine to work. And she said, I've never put something underneath the presser foot that this Kenmore could not successfully sew through. It's just really, Kenmores are known for that too. They're known for being a workhorse. They're known for being incredibly strong, heavy. Some people call them boat anchors affectionately, because they're built. The Japanese would build these machines post World War II with a lot of those metals. I've told you about this before. If any of you remember the story about where the Japanese would get a lot of their metals post World War II, because obviously when there's a war effort, metal and other precious things like that are scooped up real fast by the war effort. And anyone else that wants to do something that requires those materials, it's really, really tough. It's really, really tough for you to get your mitts on them. And so when the Japanese were looking at rebuilding their economy after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and those bombs were dropped to end World War II, they were looking around and saying, where can we get a whole lot of metal to make sewing machines so that we can then sell them to our people and also export them into the United States and other places where people will be able to, pick up our sewing machines and generate income to rebuild our economy after that devastating war. And they looked around, and then they looked at the seas of Japan. And what did they do? Does anyone know that story? Does anyone remember what the Japanese did in relation to looking around their own country for resources to build sewing machines? And with that, I'll be quiet. I'll look at my laptop and do some good mornings as we're getting ready to launch into this pretty quick. Also, I'll move Umi out of the way because Umi has such a tall stature. She kind of dwarfs Susie's machine, doesn't she? Umi's a tall gal. If she were to scale, like our size as human beings, she'd probably be around 6'1", maybe 6'2". She's a big girl, very, very tall Japanese gal. So it's always a pleasure to have her be able to step out and proudly represent these machines that came from her country of origin back in the day. Okay, so I'm going to say some quick good morning. Obviously, the first in the classroom today was Susie, and she had a little bit of an advantage today. Not that she needed it. She had a little bit of an advantage that she was actually in the workshop as I was clicking through all the screens that I have to click through to get a live stream set up. And I kind of cued her a little bit. I said, I'm getting ready to click the last screen, but she was already had her fingers on her laptop and was already typing in a good morning. So she didn't need my help. She didn't need my help at all. She was already ready to go after it. So, all right. So good morning I can literally say good morning to Susie in the workshop. Glimpse of her over here. That's Susie right over there. She's sitting at the other workbench and has her laptop all set up so she can do her moderating stuff in person this morning. And then she'll also be coming over by her machine, obviously, as we begin this spa day for this model 1755. Again, a machine that would have come on the scene in the early to mid 1970s. Susie would have gotten this machine right around 1974, 75, somewhere in that time frame, and has been operating it at a very high level for those almost 50 years. And it's never killed her. But we're going to do some things today to make sure that it's good for another 50 years. So it keeps running strong and it keeps running smooth and it can get the job done. Well, again, good morning to Tim, who almost beat Susie into the classroom, but not quite. And good morning also to Teresa. Good morning to Teresa, and always great to have Teresa here as one of the new leadership team members, and all the great things that she's bringing to the table for us. Good morning also to Emma from the great state of one of my nearest and dearest friends. Great to have her. Let's see who else we have. Kathy King. Great to have Kathy King here. Kathy is a regular at these live streams, and eventually we might try to recruit a leadership team, but not quite yet. We're still working on getting our new leaders settled in, and then we'll look at building that team up even more than we are already. Let's see who else. Good morning to Candido from New York. Great to have Candido here. And let's see, who else? I'm scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, trying to get to the bottom. Oh, good morning to Alex, screen name Al Koss from the great state of California. Great to have Alex here this morning. I think that's everybody. We've got everybody right now that have already had the opportunity to welcome to the workshop. And I'm going to invite Susie now to kind of step away from her laptop and to come over closer to her machine. I'm going to sit to the left. I'll have her sit to the right. And I want to have her tell you a little bit about this machine, maybe how she acquired it, some of the things that she really loves about this Kenmore, and what she's done again to maintain it over the years. It hasn't had any major issues for almost 50 years of hard operating. I mean, it wasn't an occasional sewing machine. It was a sewing machine that was put to work frequently, if not every day, and not light sewing, crazy heavy duty sewing on it as well. So we'll invite Susie to come over and you can get better acquainted with her. She's already, like Emma and a variety of others on the leadership team, and many of you that are in the live chat that are not part of the leadership team, you're already household names. Everybody recognizes you because you're frequently at these live streams, and you've got that visibility. And Susie is one of those as well that lots of people recognize her soon as they see the name. But here you can get to know her face to face, and also to know a little bit more about this very, very special Kenmore that's been her go-to machine for almost 5 decades. Almost 5 decades. She's just finishing typing a comment, and then I'll have her come over here. So the other moderators, if you want to kind of, once Susie steps over here, and she'll be involved in some of the things we're doing to the Kenmore as well, you might want to kind of take the lead a little bit on behalf of Susie. And I know Emma and Teresa and certainly manage things very, very well. All right. So I'll try to get Susie into the shot here. I've got to look over my shoulder a little bit. So Susie, talk a little bit about this this Kenmore. Where did you get it? How did you get it? And what have you been doing with the machine since you acquired it back in the mid 1970s?
I was given this machine as a Christmas present in the middle 70s. I was an avid sewer even then, and used an even older Kenmore that belonged to my mother. I don't know the year of my mother's Kenmore, but it was one of the old vintage models. And when this one was given to me, it was amazing. I have worked this machine to death almost. There isn't anything I haven't made. I've used leather and made axe covers. For an axe, I've made more draperies than I can count. I've done some upholstery. I'm an avid sewer. I make a lot of my own clothes, so I've done that as well. I don't think there's anything I haven't sewn. I'm recently learning to do quilting, and that was one of the motivations to get my machine in better shape.
So Susie has used it, and the one thing I heard that she didn't mention, but she said she did a lot of this machine and it never had any issues. She likes sewing leather too, and she did quite a bit of leather sewing on this Kenmore. And does anyone want to try to guess what size motor does this Kenmore have? What size engine would you guess that Susie's Kenmore has? If anyone wants to try to guess that, just type it in the live chat. And Susie is I wouldn't say that she's shy, but she's not used to being in front of the camera. She's used to operating behind the camera. So this may be a little bit of an adjustment for her today, as she's got that visibility. You can see on her face saying, "Oh yeah, turn that camera away, buddy. Turn it away." Ah, yeah. And you've been a lot of greetings. So if you want to step away just for a second, it's totally cool. A lot of people are saying, "Hey, Susie," that way you can greet them, and then we'll focus on jumping into this machine, and you can help me with some of the servicing and the maintenance on it. Perfect. Yeah, I saw Jenny, part of our leadership team, and a variety of others are very excited to see Susie face to face. It's really a different level, isn't it? And anyone that has the opportunity or the desire to travel to the workshop, it has to be sooner than later now, because I'm right in the middle of a transition, as most of you know at this point. But once I get settled on the other end, wherever that is, I would love to have more people, make the journey. If you fly in, I can pick you up at the airport, and you can be a guest of the workshop. If you drive in like Susie did from Minnesota, it's not a short drive for her. I think it took her about 5.5 hours. But she really, really wanted to come here with this very special machine and be a part of the live stream, and also experience the workshop. The workshop has kind of a magical feeling to it when you've seen it in all of the live streams, and you've seen little glimpses of it in one dimension, and then all of a sudden you're standing in the workshop where all of that magic has happened on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of machines over so many years. It's kind of it's a little bit overwhelming, is what others have told me, when they step in and all of a sudden they're looking at Dr. Singer, and they could reach out and pat him on his little head if they wanted to, or do anything else they wanted to do, and kind of just explore the workshop, really show parts of it. There's so many things to see in the workshop that's incredibly intriguing. I've gotten a lot of gifts over the years from folks, and I've had the privilege to also add things myself to the workshop as well. So your eyes almost get kind of overwhelmed as you're looking at all of the all that makes up the workshop, all these different little elements that give it a special edge and a special feeling, almost like going back to when I was a little kid. And one of the programs that was really popular then, and some of you probably know this, I'm pretty sure you do, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. There were other programs like that where they created a special world that came to life in a sense, and it gave so much depth and meaning to the message of that program. And that's really what I was hoping to accomplish with doing some of the things that I have here, almost like this little facsimile of the workshop right here. You can see it in the shot right there, where right behind these spools right here, it says Cow Country Vintage, where all the magic happens. All the magic happens inside of that little house right there, that little building. So I wasn't watching the live chat to see if anyone nailed the motor size on this. I'll see if I can look real quick and see if anyone got close to the motor size. Kenmores are a little bit hard to predict because they were all over the place with their motor sizes, all over the place. I'm also real quick going to see if I can do a sound check as well. I think we're doing well on sound. I think we had a good video speed. As Susie and I were getting set up this morning, I did a speed test, and we were pretty solid on that. Got her connected to the Cow Country network as well. So because we're running two laptops, hopefully we don't have any issues. I've got a 5G network, so it should be good to go. We should be good to go. So I'm just going to double check, quick check, and then we'll jump into this. We got a lot to cover today, and then I'd like to culminate once we've taken this machine through kind of a concise spa day. We'll be doing a lot of things to this Kenmore, and I'll be trying to show you up close, and also showing Susie up close on how she can do this in the future to maintain the machine. Then we're going to hope to set this machine up to sew, and with Susie being the most experienced with this machine, having the greatest degree of intimacy, I'm going to see if she can kind of show us a couple things on the machine and maybe demonstrate just some basic sewing on it. I've got a lot of sew-offs available that she can sew on, and we'll just kind of gain to appreciate this machine even more after it's gotten a spa day. And instead of kind of taking short breaths, someone has asthma or other things like that, you're sometimes gasping for breath depending on what you're doing. This machine will, for the first time in almost 50 years, be able to take a big gulp of air and feel just a sense of vitality, a sense of renewal after we do some of the basic things that we're going to do to give it that strength and that vitality back again. All right, let me just click on this and take a quick look at audio and video check, and then we'll jump into this.
This November, that split girl icon of joy, that champion of empowerment, sings a new tune live on stage for the first time.
I've got to skip the commercials here. Skip the commercials on the channel, yes. Skip the commercials on the channel, yes. All right, test 1 2, test 1 2. Yes. All right, test 1 2, test 1 2. So there was no lag time at all. I think our network is running really fast today. I hope we have a. This guy is a copycat. He keeps repeating what I'm saying, and I don't get it. You know what? You need to say what you're going to say. Don't repeat after me, okay? You know what? You need to say what you're going to say. Don't repeat after me. You're doing it again. You need to say what you're going to say. Don't repeat after me. You're doing it again. You need to say what you're going to say. That's fun. All right, I'll turn the volume down on that. It looks like we're doing really well on speed today, so that's a good thing. All right, let's take a quick look. And if anyone has any questions, you can certainly text me. I'm sure Susie is probably already. Emma has already typed my phone number into the live chat. If you want to actually call during the live stream, if you want to call me on my phone during the live stream and actually talk with Susie or ask her a question or just say hello to her, you're welcome to call as well during the live stream, or you can text instead of that. That's up to you. I'll leave that up to you. All right, let me see what I got here. So we are already into, if you somehow missed it, which I doubt you did, we're already into September. The first week of September, only a couple of months away from the holidays. And we'll start to see that as we go out to the different stores. I talked about that. You know, it seems like even before we get to the end of September, they're already acting like it's a week away from Christmas and the holidays. So it just seems like time is moving fast, doesn't it? I don't know about for you, but life definitely moves fast sometimes for us. Definitely moves fast. All right, just going to check a couple other things real quick, and then we'll jump into this, because I got a lot of stuff I want to show you, and you'll be able to apply this to your Kenmore or to a similar machine. The makeup of Kenmore's has a lot of crossover between the other makes and models by other manufacturers, and so hopefully you find some of these tips that we're going to be covering today helpful. And if you don't have a Kenmore yet, after you see Susie's Kenmore, the quality of construction, the strength of the machine, and everything else, you might consider adding that to your bank of machines. You might consider that. Just checking a couple other things real quick, and then we'll launch into this. So just hang in there for a second. Get acquainted with each other, visit with each other, and get family buzz going. Get that family buzz going. So if anyone in the live stream right now, owns a Kenmore or has Kenmores, I would certainly welcome you to share a little bit about the machines that you've got within the Kenmore family. They obviously were involved in machines very, very early on. And if anyone wants to do a quick search and type the history of Kenmore, which everyone associates obviously with Sears Kenmore, feel free to type that into the live chat or copy and paste it into the live chat so that we can learn a little bit more about that particular manufacturer and distributor of machines. They were really more of a distributor than they were a manufacturer, I'll tell you that. But a lot of great machines came out with their branding mark and their name on it, that's for sure. Susie, did anyone guess the motor size? Did they nail it, or were they? What size did they put down?
1.2.
Okay, who got it?
Emma.
Emma got the motor size at 1.2 amps.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, and that's spot on. This machine does have a 1.2 amp motor. That's a lot of power. That's a lot of power for any household style sewing machine. And that explains why no matter what Susie has put underneath the presser foot on this machine over the years, she's been able to get the job done with no problem at all. Able to really make a huge impact in her sewing space and taking projects on that people customarily would not think a household style sewing machine would be able to handle. But the Kenmores were really built incredibly well by the Japanese. And I believe again it was Emma that typed earlier on in the chat when I asked about, after a war and certainly during a war for sure, metal is really hard to come by. It's a precious thing to get your fingers on. And the Japanese conceived the idea of harvesting the metal from the sunken Navy vessels around their country. So they literally went out into that salty water and they harvested metal to build the sewing machines from. And I think it's a brilliant idea. It's a great idea. The only problem, obviously, is when you've had metal like that soaking for sometimes years in salt water, what is the result as that machine begins to age and as that sewist is using that machine? What can happen as a result of where that metal was harvested from? And if that was already typed in the live chat, I didn't look at the live chat in detail. So if you've already spoken to that, I apologize. But it's important to understand that because it has a direct impact on how you're going to maintain that machine. If you know that machine came from that era post-war, you're going to have to maintain that machine with a little bit of a different regimen to try to deter issues that could crop up otherwise. Are they speaking to the RUST, Rust? Okay. I can't see the live chat. Are they talking about the rust issue?
Not the rust issue, no. About how good the machine is that have not been serviced.
So what I was leading up to, and I was just asking Susie if anyone had the harvesting of the heavy metal that these Japanese machines are made from, not only the Kenmores, but certainly other makers as well from Japan, would also use that same metal from these sunken Navy vessels. We're talking about a very, very high gauge metal. And that's why generally Japanese machines, when you lift them up, they're noticeably heavier than, say, an average Singer or even a Husqvarna or an Elna or a Bernina. The Japanese models tend to feel more like a boat anchor, and it's because of the gauge metal that was used from those sunken Navy vessels. But the problem when you have metal sitting in salt water for that long is rust. And the rust, as most of you know that come from colder climates, rust is one of those things that comes from the inside out. So the outside of the machine might look absolutely gorgeous. The Japanese and other makers in that part of the world came up with some real pretty decal patterns and some filigree to accentuate the beauty of the machines. But slowly what you'll see is, like on a car in Wisconsin, you'll see that paint will start to get little bubble points on it, little bubble points where that rust is working its way to the surface. And then eventually it causes that metal to be compromised. And then it literally up and it pushes the clear coat up, and the outside of the machine is starting to deteriorate. And the best approach to mitigate that, if you acquire a machine, is right away, kind of like underbody flushes in Wisconsin with cars, right away when you acquire a Japanese machine that would have been from that post-World War II past period right after that, you want to start treating it to inhibit the rust. And I've talked about this a lot. One of the greatest rust inhibitors that you can pick up very readily is K1 kerosene. There's two types of kerosene. There's K1 kerosene, which would be like the Coleman kerosene that you would use in lanterns and other things like that. That's going to have a lower sulfur content in it, and it's going to be a much safer kerosene to use in your machines, both to inhibit rust and also to do extended lubrication on the machines, because it doesn't have that higher sulfur content. So higher sulfur content, like in the K2 kerosene, leaves a residue and can actually cause binding of the machine, because that stuff starts to crust up as it dries and it loses its fluidity in the machine. It'll actually cause your machine to run slower and more sluggish. So if you pick up kerosene, pick up the K1 kerosene. It's got that lower sulfur content. It's going to be a great lubricant for your machine. It actually has longer longevity than a basic sewing machine oil. It's also got natural rust inhibitors as well. So what I recommend is getting a spray bottle similar to this, almost like you would use to a lady or a man might use to spritz their hair when you're get done showering, or maybe you have to go through the shower real quick and you just want to dampen your hair a little bit and then comb it out or whatever. You get a little bottle like this, you spritz your hair, but instead you put, if you have a Japanese machine, you put a mixture in here of between 70 to 80% kerosene, and the rest of it a crystal white type sewing oil that's not going to cause staining and not leave a residue behind that causes a clogging up of the machine. And with a 70 to 80 mix, you'll actually, any of the orifices of the machine, the undercarriage, inside of the faceplate area, taking the top of the machine off, you'll want to get a mist setting on here and spritz that machine, not overly spritz it. Like when Susie was first, when she first got this machine, the belief back then was the more oil, the better. You don't want to saturate the machine in oil, but you give it a mist of that higher concentration of kerosene. And what that kerosene does is it latches on to any of those parts inside of the machine that are starting to develop rust or already have a rust presence. And it literally eats away. It eats away at that rust. It consumes that rust. It neutralizes that rust, and it halts that rust right where it's at. The rust can't advance any further. That rust that acts like a cancer, this is the chemotherapy, or this is the radiation for your sewing machine that will put a stop to that rust right where it is. Now, that doesn't mean that rust won't work its way through the metal, other parts, and try to present itself again. So periodically, I would say maybe depending on how badly off the machine is with rust, treating it probably twice a year would be enough to get that under control. And again, about a 70%, 80% kerosene, depending on how much rust you can see, and then just spritzing it, with a mist, kind of hitting it with a mist of that kerosene concentration. And then, having the confidence that even when you're forgetting about it and you're not remembering it anymore, that kerosene still has a lasting presence inside of the machine, and it's working to bring that rust to a final halt so that it doesn't compromise the structural integrity of your machine or create other issues with the mechanics of it. So yeah, I would definitely recommend that you do that. And you can certainly do the same thing to other sewing machines as well that are not Japanese made. The beauty of an application like this, when you set it on kind of a mist spray, is whereas I would come at different key lubrication points with something like this, or even something like this that has that extension tube, and I can get into a lot of spots using this approach, but there are spots that I won't be able to reach this effectively using something like this or this. But when I spritz that kerosene sewing machine oil mixed into that machine, it goes into those spaces that otherwise I wouldn't be able to reach as effectively. So we'll be using this approach on Susie's machine as well, just to make sure we're hitting all of those key lubrication points, and that mist will then be able to seep into some of those spots that would be harder to reach for us with normal applications like this or this. So starting out with this machine, as we begin to look at the servicing opportunities on a machine like this, the two obvious points that most people go to right away, the two obvious points are going to be gaining access to the top area of the machine, and then certainly going into the faceplate area where we've got the needle bar, we've got the presser foot bar, and we've got a number of other mechanical parts of the machine coming off of the main shaft that runs through the body of the machine. Those are all obvious places. But some of the other places that aren't as obvious, or at least people don't think about it, is how critical the bottom of the machine is. The bottom of the machine when you're driving power down to that needle bar, the rockers and everything else that are part of the mechanics on the bottom can hold that machine back just as much, if not more, than any of the mechanics on top. And that's because as you generally oil your machine, that oil will, even if it doesn't have kerosene in it, that oil will slowly begin to break down some of that dirt and filth and varnishing. And which way does it run because of gravity? It's going to run down, right? So as we oil components up here, as we oil components in the faceplate area, maybe we remove the opening here that gives us access to the raceway and the dogs. As we lubricate all these components, generally the oil is going to migrate down. And along with the oil migrating down is all of the crud and all of the dirt and all of the filth that's being washed away to some degree on the upper regions of the sewing machine. So a lot of people will automatically go here, they'll go here, they go here, but they don't focus down here. And particularly on the Kenmores, the bottom of the machine is really, really, really important because there's a gearbox down on the bottom that I can guarantee you that if you go to a sew and vac, they're going to be targeting up here, maybe here, and then they'll certainly pull the top of the machine off. I would hope they would, and they'll do general lubrication up there. But they're not going to bother with that gearbox down there because it's a little bit of a tedious process to get all of that old grease out of there, clean that up as best as you can, and then apply a fresh grease to those critical worm gears that drive of that raceway. Without those worm gears that are in that gearbox at the bottom of this Kenmore, you got nothing. You've got nothing as far as power. And as that gets crudded up and that grease thickens down there, those worm gears that are driving the final execution of the power to that raceway and to that hook system to go through the sewing process, they start to run tighter and slower and more labored because that grease gets super thick. And I've even taken grease out of these gearboxes. It literally feels like cement. It's gotten that dried out and that thick. It's just lost any value at all as far as lubrication. The gears are literally turning against, and that thick, nasty grease is just binding those gears up. Now with a 1.2 amp motor, you can still drive through some of that, but it's holding the machine back and it's making it work a lot harder than it needs to work. So what we're doing again with this spa day today is we're targeting obvious areas, but we're also going to be targeting less obvious areas and trying to bring an impact for Susie's machine. So when she takes it back to Minnesota today and she sits down to it again after it gets mounted back in the table that it is back at her house, this machine will just, it's going to be toe tapping happy, ready to show its stuff to her faithful owner of almost a half a century. Machines, if you didn't know it, sewing machines have a personality. They've got in a sense, they have a spirit. And when they've been through the workshop magic process and they get renewed, they are just bubbling with enthusiasm to show their stuff to their owner. This machine doesn't care as much about me other than I'm going to be and lovingly bringing some of these areas back. But other than that, it's like, okay, thanks, Scott. Thanks a lot. Hey, Susie, let's go home and play. And that's kind of the way machines think. If you didn't know that, now you know. Now you know. Okay, so let's start with the obvious. The obvious is we're going to take this cover off, which is spring loaded. So you just kind of grip it like this. You give it a little bit of a wiggle, and it comes off straight away. And you might right away set this to the side. You might right away set this lid to the side and say, oh, I don't need to look at that. But you actually do. You actually need to look at the lid first before you even look at the machine. And I'll show you why. It's because, and I'll angle the camera down a little bit. It's because there's a number of service points on this lid too. There's a number of service points. Everything from the cam door that allows you to access the cam insertion and everything. There's pivot points on here. that you get a light oiling so that this opens and closes more freely, and those hinges don't have to work harder and then eventually break. So we put a little bit of lubricant on here. And if it looks like it's really dirty, which it isn't, because Susie is very meticulous about anything that she owns. But if it were a little bit dirty, we would go over it with a little bit of rubbing alcohol first on a Q-tip swab. I'm going to sit down and demonstrate that as if it is dirty, which it's not really that dirty at all. But we would go over that first, and then we put an oil of oil on after that. So we first of all target it with a cleaning agent, rubbing alcohol, and then we go on with the lubrication benefit. You never want to add, and I've seen people doing this, and I've seen people on YouTube's channels promoting the fact of lubricating a machine even before they clean it. That makes no sense at all, because you're basically throwing oil on top of crud, and that crud is going to keep that oil from getting down to the basic mechanics of the machine. And it's just like, it's a total waste of time. So even on a lid like this, there's critical service points. Putting a little bit of rubbing alcohol on this Q-tip swab. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the key components. One of them right here is an engager that allows us to slide that cam in and out. It's going to be part of that function of the cam stack. So we're going to clean that up a little bit here, get some of that extra varnishing off if there is any. Also on these hinge points over here, we're going to wipe that on both sides, get that cleaned up as best as we can. And again, I'm kind of going through the motions right now because Susie keeps a pretty tidy ship. You know what I mean? We've done that on top, and now that we got it clean, now we can take a light crystal white type sewing machine oil that I keep in this one with a little bit of kerosene, and we're just going to put a little drop of oil. And what I usually do is I take the Q-tip swab and I put it underneath the spot that I'm lubricating so that I don't have that dripping all over the machine. The Q-tip swab kind of catches it, so I kind of tuck it underneath there, add a little bit of oil there, not much. And there's another pivot point right here for the hinge. You can see that on the edge maybe right there. Put that Q-tip swab there, put a little bit of lubricant there. And we also have another part right here that holds that in place when you snap it down. Put a little bit around there just to make it slide a little bit easier in and out. Another hinge over here. Put a little bit on there. Just think of it like this. You don't have to memorize this. When you look at a sewing machine, any part of the machine, anything that has mobility, it pitches, it turns, it rotates, it goes up and down, anything at all like this, you want to look at that as an opportunity to maintain it with some, first of all, cleaning it and then lubricating it. And again, just a light oil. This is primarily, in this tube, is that crystal white oil that you can buy by the gallon. I'll actually show that to you. And then once you've done the top of that, you can turn it over this way, and you can get to some of those lubrication points on the bottom as well, where you know that that's going to be moving. And again, not heavy oil, just a light oiling. Over here as well by the bobbin winder, you've got a non-traditional type bobbin winding tire. This is going to be more of a rigid tire, and it's designed to be that way because it's going to be going against the inside rim of the balance wheel as it's turning. It's not going to be connecting with it in a traditional way like a bobbin winding tire. But there's so many areas on here as well as you look at it, as this is engaging and disengaging. You can kind of see that from top. Whoops. You see that from the top right here. There's different pivot points. So that tells you right away there's an opportunity. Look at the action below, see where it's pivoting, and then put a little bit of oil in that place. And you want to be really conservative by the bobbin winding tire, because as soon as you go to wind a bobbin and engage this, that oil, if you've over-oiled it, is going to spin off, almost kind of spray off. It's going to get on your bobbin winding tire, and it's going to get on the inside rim of the balance wheel, and it's going to cause the tire to slip. So put it on really, really lightly in this area, just enough to give that mechanism a little bit of an easier movement. And then after you've lubricated the key points that are moving, again, just making sure that you get the key points. You can see, again, as we're looking underneath here, the action of this that relates to the cam function. making sure we're looking at the action and knowing exactly where to put that oil. It just moves nice and easy. After we're done with that, while we still have it turned like this, we're going to take a little bit of rubbing alcohol on a Q-tip, and we're going to clean over that bobbin winding tire to make sure there's no sediment, there's no old oil or other stuff that's built on there almost over 50 years. And that's going to give you a lot better traction when you're trying to wind bobbins. So we just kind of face it like this, and then just turn it with your finger as you're going around like this. Make contact with that tire. Get it nice and clean. And if you can see it in the camera, again, Susie keeps a real tighty at that bobbin winder. And that's stuff that would cause this to be slipping as you're trying to wind a bobbin. And you're going, why can't I wind the bobbins evenly? Why am I getting uneven bobbins? Sometimes it's a product of almost like when you saw me present those FOF 130-6s recently, and I had a belt on there that was allowing that high output FOF motor that peaks all the way up to 7,000 RPMs. It was allowing that belt to slip and re-engage, and it was throwing off the feed of the material. And we were getting unevenness in the stitch quality, and that was a product of locomotion or lack of. Same thing is true of when you're winding a bobbin. You want to get a nice, even, smooth, silky smooth turn of that bobbin winding tire, and it's going to distribute that thread very, very nicely. It's not just the product of the tire, it's the tensioners and everything else, but they all play together, and it makes a big difference. So if we're looking at the bottom, you could certainly do a cleaning of this as well. A microfiber type cloth, and just clean the inside of this area a little bit. But again, the machine has been maintained very well, and generally there's nothing to wipe off. But microfiber works real well. Just be careful when you're in proximity to springs like this that control this cam function. Springs can get caught on microfiber real quick. And before you realize it, you go to pull that cloth away, you can actually damage one of these springs. So when you're anywhere near springs, near the upper tension, when you're near any area of the machine that has a spring element, be incredibly cautious with microfiber cloths. They seem to have a little bit of a fetish about wanting to go after springs. I've experienced the good, bad, and ugly of this over the years, and it can happen so quickly. And then all of a sudden you've started with a machine that otherwise is functional, and you cause damage to it yourself, which is heartbreaking, because all of us that are purist, dedicated vintage lovers, we have a principle like the medical Hippocratic oath, do no harm, do no harm. And so whatever it is to our machines, we always want to walk away from that machine having done better for it and leaving that machine better off. We don't want to, in the process of trying to help the machine, do something that hurts it, right? We just don't want to do that. So just be real careful on the bottom undercarriage of the cover. And then we can look at other things up here. We can look at the mounting where that bobbin is going to go. This is a great place right here to use a little bit of rubbing alcohol on a Q-tip swab and just swab over that space where that bobbin is going to be mounting. And why would you do that? It's not a matter of just wiping this off with some alcohol. And again, be careful by the patina of the machine. You don't want to put a lot of excess rubbing alcohol incidental to the patina. It could compromise that clear coat. So be cautious when you do it. But it's not just so that the bobbin mounts on here more securely and isn't likely to slip. It's also that the bobbin is ultimately going to go where in the machine. When we get done winding a bobbin, if we're winding it because we're out of thread, where is that bobbin going to go? Type it in the live chat. I know it's obvious, but type it anyway. It's real obvious. And if you type that it's going to go into the raceway, it's a bobbin case, and then from the bobbin case, it's going to get snapped into the raceway. You're absolutely right. The raceway is the brain center of the sewing machine. It's where all the magic happens. And so we never want to introduce, accidentally or otherwise, we don't want to introduce dirt, filth, or anything like that to that raceway. That raceway has to be incredibly clean, well maintained so that it can do its magic. And if you've got a dirty surface on here and you slide that bobbin onto that dirty surface, and then you go and slide that bobbin into your bobbin case, you're reintroducing dirt and filth and oil and other things like that into your raceway that you might have just got done cleaning. It's in the food service industry, they call it cross-contamination. So you don't want to cross-contaminate dirt from one part of your machine to another, if that makes sense. Okay? And I can see just a little bit on the top of this cover. There's a little bit of varnishing right here built up on this spool pin. You can see that in the shot. You look at the two comparatively, you've got a varnishing build up here, and then this one is looking pretty sparkly and pretty clean. And there's a variety of different ways to clean this. You can use a Dremel type polishing tool. You can use steel wool. You can use other things like that to remove this varnish. Again, I always say you don't want to leave, like you don't leave a soldier behind. They say in the military, you don't want to leave any dirt behind if you can impact it. So we'll probably, while we have this in our hand, I'll just grab one of my little wire brushes and we'll see if we can remove this real quick. I'll show you some of my wire brushes again. So at Harbor Freight, I don't talk about Harbor Freight a lot. I don't get any kickback from them. But you can buy this set of brushes, and some of you might have something similar to this. You might have something similar to this. They come in a pack of 3. And one of them is going to be a soft bristle. Another one is going to be a more aggressive bristle, metal, a stronger metal. And then you've got one that's made out of brass. This is a brass one. The brass one you're going to want to use on surfaces that are more likely to be susceptible to scratching. Brass is a softer metal than this metal is here. So to clean up this spool pin on Susie's machine, we'll try using the brass one first. If the varnishing is too thick, then we could always go at it lightly with this and then finish it off with this one. But again, we don't want to leave anything behind. So we just kind of lightly brush it over it like this. Yeah, that came off very easily. It's probably just a little faint sign of it, but very little. There it goes. There it goes. And again, these are really inexpensive at Harbor Freight. I'm sure there's other stores that sell them as well. But make sure you get a set that gives you options, because there are certain surfaces that you clean where you'll want to have a softer touch. And that's why they give you this one that probably has nylon bristles. They're nylon. They're very soft. They're very gentle. If we had varnishing on the paint, we could very, very gently with some machine oil, could very gently work that with a nylon brush like this. If we're dealing with the bottom of the machine where we have some of that thicker varnishing, we could always use something like this and or a Dremel tool. This is going to be a little bit more aggressive. And then as we're dealing with appointments of the machine, parts that are chrome coated and we got varnishing, we can use something like this brass one that's going to be a very soft touch, but it's going to create enough friction to get that varnishing removed. And just with that light little touch, I'll show you the difference that we brought to that spool pin already. You can look at it from different angles. With no effort at all, really. And you might say, as you're looking at that varnishing on there, is that really that big of a deal? Well, think about it. Sometimes as you're sewing your spool on top, as you're feeding that thread through the upper tension system, that thread will sometimes not feed off of that spool evenly, and it'll sometimes overspin, and then you get the thread getting caught on the bottom. So the more of a smooth surface your spool has to turn on here, the more even that thread generally is going to be going through that upper tension, and the better stitch quality you'll get. So even something as minor as this can play into the quality and the caliber of stitching that your machine is able to do, and how evenly that thread gets fed through the system. So notice the small things, because the small things can make a difference. All right, so I'm going to set this lid to the side for just a moment. The only other thing I didn't show you specifically, we've got thread guides on the top of this Kenmore right here and right here. There is some varnishing on here as well, if you look real close on the side of here. And we could very easily take that off with the brush also. You can kind of see it from the angle there. I know we have a lot to cover, so I'm trying to be fairly efficient with the time. And with these thread guides, be real careful with that brush, because even brass can scratch that beautiful patina that Susie's done a brilliant job of protecting for almost a half a century. So even just lightly going over that, look at that shine on there now. It doesn't take much to maintain your machine properly. And I would say give that machine every opportunity for greatness. And obviously, when there's varnishing on the outside of these thread guides, there's going to be varnishing on the inside where that thread is passing through. So, using a Q-tip swab with some rubbing alcohol, lightly going over that as well, get that varnish off of there. Because we were talking about in one of the recent live streams with Melanie's machine, how when we're using 100% cotton thread, it can create a drag factor. Remember us talking about that? And the drag factor can throw off the hook timing and everything on the sewing machine, because of that factor that thread is not feeding through at the proper rate of speed in relation to how the machine is wanting to receive it. So even little thread guides like this, if they got that extra varnishing that's grabbing that thread as it's passing through, it can slow down that natural feed factor, and it can affect your sewing. So little things make a big difference, even on these. And the maintenance on this one, this is our tensioner right here for bobbin winding on top of the cover that you open to get to the cams. Between here, as you pull it apart like this, you can see me kind of pulling it apart. There's a spring in there. There's even maintenance opportunities for there. With something like this, what I would generally use, I'll show you. I got another one. These are available in the section in your store, like Walmart or wherever else, that people use as a type of flosser, especially if they have braces. These are a lifesaver. You just pull the little cap off, and then you have this little bristle right there. You kind of see that if I put it in front of my thumb. And this little bristle has all kinds of little extensions off of it that grab hold of stuff like that when you're going through a tensioner like that. And you could certainly put just a light coat of rubbing alcohol on here. And then once you put a little light coat of rubbing alcohol on here, this tensioner that is critical to winding a bobbin right here, you can just gently pull this top portion up. It's two halves. One half is mounted to the little cover that you access for the cam. The other one has the spring in between, and it allows you to separate the two. So when that thread goes in there, it gives you that proper tension. But you can slide this in between those two halves, kind of like that right there, if you can see that in the shot. And then just work it back and forth. Work it back and forth between those two sections so that you're getting any of that extra stuff that might be stuck in there out. And because this is going to be a major factor in how that thread is distributed as you're winding a bobbin, it's really one of the critical maintenance points on a machine that I would say 90% or more of the people miss. They forget about this. And then when their bobbins are not winding correctly, either because they never did the maintenance that we just did on the bobbin winding assembly down here, or they haven't maintained this properly, they all of a sudden are having bobbin winding issues. So yeah, just focus on the little things, and again, you'll start to notice a lot more when you look. So, all right, let's look at the top of the machine now. Susie, does this machine have a name or not?
She's just my girl.
So this is Susie. I just asked Susie if you couldn't hear me. I said, does your model 1755, does it have a name? She said, nope, it's just my girl. So if anyone wants to try to be an influence to Susie, not that it probably won't work because she's very set in her ways. She knows what she's about. But if anyone wants to try to influence Susie and offer a name idea, she'll get back to you at a future live stream and let you know whether or not she gave it any serious consideration. So, all right. So let's look in the top of this Kenmore now. There is so much opportunity here as we're looking down at the top of this Kenmore. And I would say generally it's a fairly clean machine as machines go. Here you've got the cam stack area, got a lot of mechanics, pitman arm, you got a number of other mechanics coming off of the main shaft here. You got critical lubrication points right here that supply lubrication to the main shaft. Other critical lubrications for the main shaft on this end as well. It's all over the place. And then you can see some parts of the faceplate mechanics that you can't see when you're looking at it from the front, like these rocker arms right here that are critical for the take-up arm and everything. Even down to the pressure foot pressure right here. That's a critical opportunity for servicing as well, so that you have proper pressure foot pressure when you're sewing. And we've talked a lot in live streams about how critical pressure foot pressure is in getting proper stitch definition and stitch sizing as well in relation to the stitch length. So in this area, because we're doing a live stream and we have some limit on our time, this is a great opportunity right here where we can use that spritzing approach to cover a lot of the mechanics that are already appear to be in generally very clean condition. So we don't have to go in there and do a lot of detailed cleaning where there's a huge amount of varnishing and buildup in there. The mechanics all in all look like they're pretty doggone tidy. So we're going to be concentrating more so on giving fluidity, not necessarily doing a lot of deep cleaning, at least on top of the machine. So I'm going to grab my handy dandy little spritzer thing here and see if we can hit some of these key mechanics here, all the way from just inside of the balance wheel here, all the way across the top of the machine. I'm going to set the camera down just for a moment. Actually, I can set it right over there. And again, I'm giving a light spray. I'm not soaking it. I'm not saturating it. And then if you see some areas that need a little bit more attention, you can always go in there. If it's within reach, you can use one of the wire brushes, say on the main shaft. Go after some of that, get some of that. There's a little bit of varnishing buildup on there. Go against some of that. Against the top of the cam mounting point. Just a light touch. Down over here near the pitman arm, working some of that varnishing off as well. Now, when we spritzed it, we covered the bulk of these mechanics, including this right here, this reader finger that's going to allow us to read those cams. But some of the other critical areas we're not able to hit as effectively unless we pinpoint it. So that's where we come in with some of our kerosene, if I can find it. I know it's here somewhere. Where did I put it? Oh, there it is. Coming with some of our kerosene. And one of the key lubrication points on this Kenmore, really one that's incredibly essential, is two of them actually. One is right on the inside of here that turns in the sewing process. You can see as I'm moving that. And there's going to be a key lubrication point that goes all the way down. Kind of go like this. You see I'm using this, what are these things called, Susie? This little doohickey here. I think they have a name. Anyway, this little pokey thing. You see I'm sliding it all the way down. There's a good inch or so that it has to go down before it gets to the main shaft. And the reason I'm doing this is there's crud and there's buildup that can get into there. All I'm doing is touching this main shaft that's going across, so I can't hurt it. It's just like this section right here, but it's concealed. So it's very, very dense, strong metal. And I'm just making sure that I'm getting all the way down there. So when I add that oil, it's going to get down there and be effective. I can also go in there with one of these if I'm concerned, and I can slide one of these into that well as well to make sure that I'm trying to clean some of that crud out that otherwise might hold that oil from getting down there. And then I'm going to add 2 to 3 drops of oil down there, so that's going to give that main shaft some really, really good lubrication. And then like usual, I can go over and I can absorb some of that extra oil that is on top of that surface. You don't just leave it there, because then it can create issues with the machine. And I'm already in here. I might as well wipe some of this off as well. You can see we've already brought a little bit of impact, even with a machine like this that's been maintained very meticulously and maintained incredibly well. Dirt is dirt. You can't get away from it. You can't get away from dirt. It follows you no matter how clean your house is. You're going to have to battle dirt from one point to another. So while we're in here, we just take advantage of getting some of that excess dirt out, because dirt migrates, doesn't it? It moves around the machine. It gets sucked into the motor and just a variety of other issues. So we're going to throw that in the garbage can so it can't do any more harm to Susie's machine. We also have a critical lubrication point right here. This is part of the pitman assembly. And we're going to put a little bit of oil in there as well, right in that point right there. About 2 drops or so. And we also have our control lubrication points, which we can't reach as effectively with this, but we can reach them if we're using our other applicator. So I'm going to grab that other applicator. And you might have a little bit of trouble seeing this in the camera. I'll try to step back from the light a little bit. But we got some of our controls right here that are for our knobs. Want to put a little bit of drop of oil in there as well to keep those moving nice and freely. And then I always add a little bit across the top of here as well. Because in the sewing process, this pitman arm is going to be rotating, and you can see kind of the action. I'm actually going to raise Susie's presser foot. You see the action of the mechanics there as it's turning. This is rotating. It's elliptical. It's going not only from right to left, but it's also kind of moving up and down a little bit as well. You can see some of those critical lubrication points. And again, as you study your machine, whether it's a Kenmore or another similar machine, with the machine unthreaded, no bobbin case in there, just turn the balance wheel sometime in any of those areas that you have visibility of the mechanics. Look and see how those mechanics are moving. Look and see what they're doing, and then see how you can help them. But again, Susie's machine is clean enough. There's not a lot of deep cleaning we have to do, at least on the top of the machine. We might encounter other things as we go through other phases of the machine. You can see over here as we're looking at the faceplate, I'll kind of point down. See if I can rotate the machine a little bit as well. I don't want to disconnect our camera. We'll have a short live stream. So we're looking at the faceplate here. You can see on the top of this cam right here, this is the cam off of the main shaft that drives all the mechanics in the faceplate. We have quite a bit of varnishing on there. And in this space right here, we would be hard pressed to get one of these brushes in there. It's just not going to fit, in there. So we can do one of two things. We put a little bit of oil on there to soften that, and we can use something like this to get in there, clean some of that up. That'll kind of conform to the angle of that. You can see even with just a light touch, we've already gotten that initial stuff off the surface. That's a combination of varnishing and maybe a little bit of rust. It's hard to say. They look very, very similar. You see how that kind of follows the contour of the machine very nicely. You can fit that into spaces that otherwise you couldn't, even into there. Get that in there and get those joints nice and clean as well. And with little effort, look at the difference we brought to that area already. Quite a difference, isn't it? And again, this is a process that you could take a lot more time doing. I'm giving you the expedited version today to show you what kind of impact we can bring in a fairly compact period of time. Even a couple of hours is compact, because if this Kenmore was in the workshop going through the normal workshop regimen, I would probably spend almost 10 to 12 hours on this machine. And we're only going to be able to catch kind of a glimpse of that today, but it'll give you a great direction, I think, so that you'll know what way you want to go with your machines, whether it's a Kenmore or something else. Let's focus on the faceplate a little bit now. I'm going to set the camera down. Focus on that faceplate a little bit. I'm going to move our stethoscope just for now. We don't need it right at this point, so. So as we're looking into the faceplate on this Kenmore, there's all kinds of mechanical opportunities. And this is an area that some people might use the spritz approach. But the problem with the spritz approach in this space, the spritz approach meaning using something like this, it's real quick and efficient, but there's a lot of electrical stuff in here, including our light assembly right here. And even if you don't hit this directly with the oil, if you spritz it, you're going to have probably extra oil floating around in here, and it could affect how well your light works. It could cause even a breakdown of some of the wiring or the other components of the light assembly. So I would say avoid the spritz approach in here if you can. Use that I showed you just a second ago to get in some of those tight spaces if you got varnishing. And again, like I showed you on the other ones, you can always put a little drop of rubbing alcohol in here. I would recommend, if you do that, probably to put a little paper towel or something on the bed of the machine. See if I can show you that. That way, if anything drips down, it doesn't hit the chrome directly or the paint. So just a little bit more cleaning, a little bit more tidying up. Also put a little bit of alcohol on there to break some of that varnishing down just a little bit quicker. Okay, we could spend a lot more time doing that, because there certainly would be more opportunity. But I'm going to focus on lubricating key components on it. And again, the easiest way to determine that is to rock the balance wheel like this. As soon as you rock the balance wheel, you're going to be able to see what those mechanical pivot points are as you're going through. See a little bit more varnishing here that I. And some of these varnish points, I'll just show you this one in particular, this one right here. As I'm going over with a brush with it, it's being a little bit resistant, this section right here that I'm touching. So when it's being a little bit resistant, what you can do if you have it within reach, you can grab a Dremel style tool. And you can see the type of brush I have on right now here. It's called a broom brush. It's a broom brush. It's going to spin in a fairly compact space. And right now we've got that varnishing that's being a little bit resistant to our other brush. I'll kind of light it up with the light. You'll be able to see it even better. You can see that right down over there. I pointed it out before. So what we're going to do is we're going to go after it now with the Dremel and just kind of clean that little section up. It sometimes takes that spin up and that friction to make the impact that we want. If you look at that section now, look at the brightness of that. There we've got a little bit more that we can hit real quick with the Dremel tool. You see where that brown is on there right now? Now, if you're working on portions that are chromed, like this take-up arm, number one, realize the take-up arm is fairly fragile. It's designed to move that thread up and down in the sewing process, and what it really does is it contributes to that lock stitch definition as it's pulling that thread up taut, very much like the check spring on the upper tension. They work together to help make sure that that stitching is nice and balanced and tight. But as you're working around this, just be real careful. These are a fairly light gauge metal compared to the other components of the machine. And they're also constantly moving in the sewing process. So as we go through and lubricate it, we'll be using our extended tube to make sure we're getting into those deeper parts where this is pivoting and it's really looking for that proper lubrication. And again, we're not as in depth as if it were in the workshop on a regular service. We're doing kind of a quick spa day, but it's going to be a thorough spa day nonetheless. You can see already the brightness of that metal that had some of that varnishing. Think of varnishing like a glue. Varnishing is like a glue that holds those mechanics back. All right, let's do some targeted lubrication now. We'll use our extended tube so we can get a little bit deeper into those spaces. Susie, there's a flashlight right there to the right. Can you grab that one for me? Yeah. We use our flashlight to make sure that we can see exactly where we're putting that oil down. Again, any of those pivot points. Got several right back over here. I'll see if I can show you with the camera as well. Way back there on the right-hand side. I won't be able to hold the camera and the flashlight, but you can see as you're looking at that, I think this camera's pretty good. See how that's pivoting right there. So we want to go after any of those pivot points, and using a light, a supplemental light source will make sure you're not missing something. And again, not heavy oil, just a light little drop on there. A light little drop will do nicely. And when you're looking at the needle bar, I'll kind of show you from the side a little bit. When you're looking at the needle bar, it starts right up here, and then there's a mid stage, and then there's a lower stage. Ideally, you want to put a drop of oil at each stage: upper stage, middle stage, and then also lower stage. But notice I'm not putting excess oil, just a simple little drop, because as soon as that needle bar moves up and down, it's going to distribute that into the shaft opening, and then the entire bar will benefit from that lubrication. So it can be really, really light and still do the job very nicely. Also, we want to see if we can get to our presser foot bar as well. I'm going to go ahead and remove this light right now. This is a bayonet style light. You see that right there in the shot. Just push it up and twist it. We take it out. And we're going to be replacing it with one of these high output LED lights that I like so much. Actually, everybody likes them, I think. They put out about 3 to 4 times the light, and they put out very little heat. So depending on where your sewing space is set up, if that room space, if that sewing suite has a tendency to fluctuate in temperature, cold, hot, etc., this will give you a nice bright sewing surface on the bed and by the needle without putting out excessive heat, if that's a thing that you're trying to keep balanced. But we'll keep it out for right now because we have a little bit of maintenance to do on the light socket as well that we'll do real quick while we're in here. Let's see what else we have. A little bit hard to see in the shot, but I'm also going to put a drop of oil on the pivot point for the take-up arm slide as well, because as you're rotating this up and down, if you can see that in the shot, the easier that moves, the easier it can do its job. So that little bit of oil I just put on there is now, if you could feel how this is moving so easily now, it's just kind of ridiculous. Very, very light movement. A little bit of cleanup to do on the front of the faceplate area here. On the inside, there's a reasonable amount of varnishing right in proximity to where this light socket is. We're going to clean that up just real quick using a Q-tip swab with a little bit of rubbing alcohol, because we don't want that oil, that old oil and stuff in the process of the machine operating to migrate into this socket area where we have electrical. It's not as much of a fire hazard, but it could create intermittent issues as far as the light operating properly and having that right connectivity. So we'll use a Q-tip swab with the alcohol on the outside, and then we'll use a clean Q-tip swab on the inside of the socket where we're going to put that new LED light as well. So right here, you may have trouble seeing it a little bit, but right here we've got a fair amount of varnish buildup on this plate. You'll see the results of it on the Q-tip as soon as I pull it away. Now, if I had this in the workshop for one of my full services that takes about 10 to 12 hours, I would also remove this light socket as well. There's a screw right here or a bolt, and there's a bolt right there that allows you to take this mounting plate off that has this socket attached to it. The reason I would do that is I think we've done an adequate job of lubricating the mechanics in here, but there's other lubrication points underneath this socket that I would be able to get at even easier if I were just to take out that one bolt, that other bolt, and then this whole thing comes off and I can see the mechanics more clearly behind there. But I think I'm able to reach them well enough that it'll be more than adequate. But just wiping up that one little spot inside of the faceplate, let me show you on the camera what we got off of there. Let's see if we can do it like that, maybe. Now with this other clean end of the Q-tip swab, we're actually going to go inside of the light socket itself where that light's going to go in, because there are copper contacts in here that are fairly fragile, but using a Q-tip swab, we can clean off any oil residue or other stuff like that that's on there. Just gently swabbing it. And that way we'll increase the connectivity of that light once we insert it in the machine. And you can see, again, I want to hammer it home that Susie is my dream customer and my dream friend when it comes to being a friend of sewing machines. She keeps a really clean machine, but regardless, environmentally, our environment is never free of dirt. It's never free of all kinds of contaminants. If we cook in our home in any way, there's stuff that goes airborne. And then when you're moving through your house, if you've ever gone a pair of drapes or something like that, the movement of your body, that energy going past the drapes will cause those drapes to move. And just think of that being the presence as you're going through your house. Everything in your environment moves as you move through the house. And it ends up sticking to your sewing machine. So even in that little light socket right there, we got stuff off of that as well. So now we're gonna go ahead and put that new light in. We'll look at both of them comparatively. I'll kind of back the camera up a little bit. This is our old incandescent bulb. Get our power cord set up over here real quick. We're not going to operate the machine yet. We'll just check that light bulb real quick. See what we think of that. And I'll show you on this Kenmore, when Susie brought the machine to the workshop, I was intrigued. I was intrigued by where the plug-in is on this machine. You put the machine way forward like this, and then you can see right here are the connection points for plugging. Right here are the connection points for plugging that power cord in on the under carriage bottom side of the machine right here. So, not the most accessible thing that Kenmore ever did, but they probably had a reason for doing that. And I explained to Susie as well that this is also an area that you can clean also. Anything that has electricity running through it, the more clean of a connection you have, the better connection that's going to be. So if we wanted to real quick, this machine is safe if I lean it like this just against the faceplate temporarily, kind of gently like that. With something like this, we can either clean it with a Dremel, which is very effective, probably the most effective way to clean them. If we try using a brush of some sort, it's going to be hard to get into those middle spaces right there. You know what I mean? Trying to get into that middle space right here where that power cord connects. We're going to be missing a lot of stuff if we try to get in there. Some of it we can clean, some of it we can't. But if we use this broom style brush, we're going to be able to go from the angle and probably get that a lot more tidy. And this is a metal plate right behind it, so we're not going to do any damage if we incidentally touch that with that brush system there. But before I do that, I've already used this on another part of the machine near the faceplate area. I don't want to recontaminate this area. So we do a little bit of quick maintenance on the brush on the Dremel tool as well. And I've shown this to you in other live streams. We take a cloth like this, and I'm using a Windex product at this point. Just putting a little bit of Windex on this part of the rag where I've got my finger. Not real heavy, just a little bit light on there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of maintenance on our Dremel tool. Just turned it on. It doesn't show up as dark as it does in person, maybe if I hold it like that. But if you don't take that off of the Dremel tip, the brush, the broom brush, you're going to be reintroducing that to these electrical contacts. So you might as well clean off that stuff and start with a clean brush and then clean those, and then you can always re-clean it again very easily. And actually, I'm seeing that the better brush point would probably be a spinning type, but I'll see if I can clean it fairly well like this right now. Yeah, you can see that. And you notice how I'm changing the angle of the Dremel so I can get underneath that lip of the connection. Then after we clean that, we're going to go over it with a Q-tip swab to get the extra residue off of there. And make sure you use rubbing alcohol to do that with, because it's an electrical contact. You never want to generally use an oil base in anything that's going to have a current of electricity flowing through it. It could create an issue. So I've got rubbing alcohol that wicks away real quick. It's a great cleaning agent. I'm just going to swab those real quick along these contacts right there. Get a little bit closer so you can see that. Now, you may not be able to see them, but they are shiny, shiny, shiny now. And look what we got off of there with very little effort. Now, since we're looking at the bottom of the machine right now, we can certainly look at other areas of opportunity. But before we do that, I think I'll go back to the faceplate and we'll look at plugging. Now that we have a nice clean contact, we'll look at plugging that machine in, plugging, as Susie calls it, her girl. We'll plug her girl in and see the difference between the two lighting systems, so that if you don't already have LED options in your machines, you can consider adding them possibly. So before, we got a lot of things we'll do down here, but we'll focus on that in just a little bit. And there's obviously maintenance opportunities here as well. This is a little bit harder section to get into. Even if we use our little flossing tool. Let's see where I put that, over here. Even if we use like a little flossing tool in these spaces right here to clean those out, we're not going to be able to get in there, and we're not going to be able to neutralize any of the varnishing that's in these electrical contacts. So what I would recommend instead of using a tool like that, is I would recommend just a light little spray of chemical. It's a special electronic cleaner that's used to clean components off. And you can pick it up at pretty much any retailer. Going to get a little tray like this. Put that electrical contact right there. And this is what this looks like. It's an excellent cleaner. It's an excellent cleaner for basically eradicating any debris, anything at all that's in that electronic connection right here that's going to be critical to powering Susie's machine. And again, you don't saturate it, you just hit it very lightly. This is what it looks like. If you want to look at the can. The one thing I will caution you about, and I want you to hear this caution loud and clear. This CRC electronic cleaner is incredibly flammable. Incredibly flammable, more so than even gasoline because of its concentration. So when we clean an electrical contact like this, we're going to follow it up by using an air compressor to make sure that we have that nice and dry before we plug it into the machine. You don't want to spray this in here and then plug it in straight away. Otherwise, you're going to have a really, really exciting day. And you might also damage your machine in the process. So you just put it into this little bin right here. And again, this is not friendly stuff. This is not friendly stuff for paint or chrome. So you want to also spray it in a direction that it's not going to be going towards your sewing machine. And I've got a limited space. I'm going to push the camera back as well because I don't want it to get on the camera surface. And again, just a really light little spray. Notice I didn't saturate it. I just gave it a quick little spray. And what that stuff is doing right now, similar to kerosene, is it's dripping down into those electrical copper contacts. And at any of the crud or anything like that's in there, it's eating it up. It's literally vaporizing it and getting rid of it so that that ends up being an absolutely crystal clear copper surface for that electricity to flow through. But what we're going to do right now is make sure that we're operating safe. So I'm going to grab my compressor, kind of hold this away from the machine a little bit. And I'm going to give it a nice steady flow. It doesn't have to be heavy. It just has to be constant. You might hear the compressor come on. You're going to hear a loud sound. That's just the compressor recharging this, so don't be concerned. There we go. Oh, I was intentionally delaying until the compressor got done so that I wouldn't have to go, and then we're going to. So our last little thing of opportunity is our actual plug-in. And a lot of you might not even think about this, but the plug-in gets a lot of oxidation, a lot of buildup on it. Electricity is like a vacuum cleaner. It kind of draws things in, the molecules of dirt and everything. And then because of the electricity presence, it basically fuses it onto that copper. So we want to make sure that this is also clean. Also looks like we've got one of the contacts that might be a little bit bent. This oftentimes will happen if you plug something in and instead of grabbing the cord here and pulling it out, you're in a rush, as all of us are sometimes, and you grab it here and you might wiggle a little bit and then it gets bent a little bit like that. Not a big deal. It should be easy enough, hopefully, for us to just straighten that out a little bit using my Leatherman. Just kind of go like this gently. Yeah, it's not perfect. It's not perfect. We got it more straight now, so it's going to go and slide into that a little bit better. First of all, you have to clean this a little bit. If you can see it in the shot, it's got a lot of junk on there right now. A lot of junk. We want to try to get a nice shiny surface, so when we plug it in, it's going to have a lot better connectivity. And we'll use our Dremel because it's the most expeditious way to do it right now. It doesn't mean we couldn't use a like this to try to clean it up. We certainly could. But again, I'm trying to be reasonably efficient with time. And with a little bit of effort, look at the side of that already. And I realize that to some people this seems excessive, but anything you can do to help your sewing machine out so that it's going to have a more steady flow of electricity, it's going to be able to optimize that motor and the foot controller, etc., the better off you are. And it only takes seconds to make it better. So why not do it? And I'll take our brush as well. And we only used it a little bit on the contacts on the other end, which were electrical as well. So I'm not going to clean it again right now, but I'll clean it before we go into some other part of the machine. And again, once you get done cleaning something like that with a Dremel or something like that, you always want to take just a second and go ahead and just swab it off. Swab it off because a lot of that junk that was stuck to there is going to still be there. It's just in a small little powder form now. And we want to get that powder off of there. Otherwise, we kind of defeat the purpose of polishing it up. And it only takes a matter of seconds. I'm just going to take those and just swab off it real quick, get all that extra junk off of there. Maybe like that will be easier for the camera. Yeah, and this wasn't as bad as it could have been for sure, but we still got quite a bit off of there. So now we're at a point now where we're just going to test that light bulb, kind of see the difference. We'll start with the incandescent, and then we'll move into the LED. So this is our incandescent. I'll just go ahead and hit the button. It's not bad. It's not bad. But as I leave it on for a little bit, I'll show you something. $182, $237, $240, $242 degrees. I just saw it pop on there. It said 253 degrees. That's leaving it on. That's leaving it on for just a matter of seconds. Now, if you're operating in a tighter space in your sewing suite, let's say you have a small little room somewhere in your home, and you're operating this in the summertime and you don't have the best ventilation in that room, imagine a little light bulb like this that's putting out about 250, maybe even as high as 300 degrees, what that does to the environment as you're trying to sew on that extended project. It creates a very uncomfortable place to sew. So rather than encountering that, or as I said in the other live stream, this is a metal faceplate. A lot of faceplates are made out of plastic, and with this generating as much as potentially 300 degrees of continuous heat, only millimeters away from that plastic, it can actually warp or even melt that plastic. So I'm always a strong proponent of get rid of the incandescent, puts out almost 4 times more light, puts out very little heat, and you'll have a lot more comfortable, a more pleasurable sewing experience. You'll be able to see what you're doing better, and you won't be sweating. You won't be sweating bullets. See if that's safe enough for me to take out. Okay. So this one we had it plugged in. I didn't look at a timer, but we had it plugged in probably less than 30 seconds. And we're putting about 300 degrees out of this little bulb. So we're going to put this one instead. We've already cleaned this socket and everything. We've cleaned all the other electrics nicely. Now we'll put this one in place of it. See what kind of light we get. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You probably can't see it in the camera, but it's crazy more bright. Crazy more bright. And let's leave it on for just a little bit and see what the temperature difference is. The other one in less than 30 seconds was putting out about 300 degrees, almost 300 degrees. Now we've got a lot more light, crazy amount more light. Let's see how our temperature is doing. $81 degrees, 84 degrees, 85 degrees. $89 degrees, 87 degrees. So somewhere in the 80-degree mark between the highest point we got is about 80 to 90 degrees compared to almost 300 degrees. So that's almost a quarter of the heat this LED bulb is putting out compared to the incandescent, and it's putting out almost 4 times more light. It seems like an obvious choice to me. So we've done all of our cleaning in here. We've done all of our electrical servicing as well to make sure that our whole electrical system is healthy and optimized. We go ahead and close that now. Shut our light off. And the only other thing I'm going to lubricate real quick while we're right here is our presser foot bar control. Just going to put a single little drop of oil, since this is something that slides up and down. And then work it up and down a couple times. And again, whenever you oil, when you can, just wipe off the excess oil. And if you're not familiar with these Japanese presser foot controls and quick releases, they're really quite nice. As you look at this, you may be, they're actually numbered, where a lot of the presser foot controls are not numbered. And so when you're pushing it down, you're not really sure where you're at. With this one, you've got numbers. You may not be able to see in this shot. Maybe you can. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you're sewing something incredibly light, let's say you're sewing some silk or satin, maybe some velvet, push it down to maybe about 1 or 2, right about to there, because you don't want excessive presser foot pressure if the material's really, really light. But then if you move into some of the leathers or the canvas or the denim, you can push it up maybe to 3 or 4. You just put it down like this, so that it's further down. You've got more presser foot pressure, more dense material to ensure that you get good feed. And then if you've got a project that's real bulky, project that's super duper bulky, you can hit this quick release ring right here. You see that it popped up. And right now at this point, if you look down by the presser foot, you've got no pressure at all. So you can lift it all the way to there. Which gives you a huge amount of clearance. You can kind of cheat and get that super thick project underneath there. And then once you have it in position, let go of this and then re-engage your presser foot pressure up here. And then you're ready to resume sewing. I would recommend that highly. It's a great way to kind of cheat and get those thicker projects underneath the presser foot when your clearance otherwise is a little bit limited. Now, even without doing that, this Japanese clone machine already has a ridiculous amount of hyperextension. You can see this is our normal clearance right here. That's our standard clearance. But if we push up on the presser foot pressure from behind, we can get almost as much natural clearance as we did when we took the presser foot pressure out and I grabbed it by hand and pushed it up. So that's another nice feature on these Japanese Kenmores, is they have a beautiful hyperextension where you can get those thicker projects into position, lower it, and then once you have that in place, put that presser foot down, and you've got a beautiful working solution there. I'm not going to show you maintenance on the upper tension, because it's going to take a little bit more time to do that with this type of upper tension. But I'll tell you this, that you can do a nice job of cleaning these. Let's see where I put it. I keep losing it. There it is. You can do a nice quick job of these. Make sure your presser foot lever is in the up position so there's no pressure on these discs. Now the two, actually on the Kenmores, there's 3 tension discs, because you'll have 2 concave discs and then you'll have a center disc, so you can put those 2 threads on either side of that partition for twin needle sewing. But what you can do is you can take a clean one of these dental tools, and when there's no pressure, these discs will rotate all the way around if you just do this very, very slowly. The discs are literally turning like this, and you can put a little bit of rubbing alcohol on one of these, and then what I'd recommend is keep wiping it on a clean cloth like this. You can go between those discs very easily with this dental tool. Gently turn those little discs so you're cleaning them real nicely, and then periodically just wipe this off clean on the cloth. Again, just a little bit of rubbing alcohol. And then again, rubbing alcohol wicks real quick. So once you've cleaned it like that, just leave those discs open for a little bit with that presser foot up. And that way, any of that excess moisture from the rubbing alcohol will dry up and will not be present in there when you start running thread through it. And that was Susie. Susie sending me a text from about 2 feet away. I caught you, Susie. Look at. Ha ha! Ha ha ha! All right. What is Susie sent me a text from 2 feet away? What in heaven's name did she say? Let's see. What is it? Oh, I hit the wrong password. Son of a gun. Somebody tried calling me too. Interesting. I didn't hear the phone ring, but it must be one of those solicitation calls. 720 area code. I have no idea where that's from. 720. Somebody wants to Google 720. Tell me where that's located. That would be awesome. Okay, so Kevin H in the chat is asking if all LED lights are the same. The answer is absolutely not. They're not all the same. And I can show you an example that I showed Susie when we were talking about her machine when she brought it into the workshop, the difference. And if y'all remember that 403A that I just live streamed recently that came out of California named Charlotte, that belongs to Claudia. Claudia had already put an LED bulb in there, but when I showed her the difference between her LED bulb and mine, she was like, oh my goodness, what a difference. And I'll show that to you right now so you can see it as well. That's a great question, Kevin. Let's see if we can look at that right now. I'll just have to grab that bulb real quick. Okay, we'll take the bulb back out of Susie's real quick. We'll look at them side by side. So, excuse me. This is the type of LED bulb, if a machine is in the workshop, it's a kind that I use to replace. And you'll notice that each column has 5 light nodes, and there's no gap points. There's no significant gap points on these light nodes. They're very, very closely together. So they provide a nice, even, bright light for visibility down on the bed of the machine and also by the needle as well. They've done a really good job of engineering this light so that there's no blind spots, there's no shadow spots of it. This is the one that Claudia put in the machine. And when you look at it, you'll see that there's shadow and gap points right there, right there, right there. Now, there's a lot of light nodes in each column, but then they have these gap points that creates shadows and loss of light luminosity on the machine surface. So when you compare the two, and there might be better than the one I'm using, there might be better ones than this, but look at the two side by side. So the answer is LED lights are not the same. And if someone finds a better option than this one, I'll be glad to use it. But for right now, it's the best option that I found to give a really, really nice, bright, even light so that you don't have any shadow points as you're looking down on the bed. The bed is nice and bright. The needle area is nice and bright. And you don't have to deal with having to have auxiliary lights. This light is more than adequate on its own. So great question, Kevin. Really a great question. I think that was Kevin, right? Yeah. Okay, I'm going to see how long we've been running. We've been running a little bit over 2 hours, and we've covered a lot already. We've covered a lot already, and we're getting closer to the finish line. We've already covered servicing the electrical system, which is really a lot more important than most people realize. We've serviced the electrical system. Now we've got a beautiful, bright lighting system so that when Susie gets back to Minnesota, she's able to, without a lot of auxiliary lights or even room lights for that matter, if she chooses not to use them, this will be more than enough to get the job done with different projects. And as you close the faceplate, the only modification that I would make, and Susie and I can do it after the live stream if she wants to, if we can get some of that HVAC shiny tape and we could put it on the inside of the faceplate right here. If I turn it like this with the light off, you can see right now as we're looking inside of that faceplate area, there's nothing right here to reflect that light when this is closed, to reflect that light and force that light down even more to make this bed and to make this needle area even brighter with better visibility. But if we add just a little piece of that HVAC tape, I'll actually grab it just to show it to you, and then I'll leave it up to Susie. Some people don't want to put stuff on. This is her girl. So she might say, it's a great idea, Scott. I'll think about it, but I don't want to do it right now. And I'll totally respect that because that's her decision. But I want to show you what kind of tape it is. It's used in HVAC if you're doing air conditioning, professional work, if you're doing heating and air conditioning, that sort of thing. And then you know what to get at your hardware store or wherever, so you can use it to increase that light factor. I got those Tic Tacs in my pocket, so I got to take those out. I can hear him coming, Dad. I can hear him coming. So this is it right here. This roll's gotten quite a bit of use. I've used this on my air conditioning system and my heating system and everything else. You just buy it in a roll like this. I want to say, and don't quote me on this, I want to say that this stuff is made out of some sort of aluminum. It's actually metal. It's actually a metal material that's made into a tape that has a sticky back. But what you do is you cut a strip of this, and then you would literally put it inside of this faceplate like that. And then what happens when you do that, you stick it to that surface. When you close this faceplate, that light reflects off of this and forces it down because this is closed up here. It's a closed cavity, and the light has nowhere to go but down. And so it intensifies the brightness on the bed and the needle area even more using this sort of reflective tape. And a lot of machine manufacturers automatically will stick something like this in the machine faceplate, but the Japanese didn't always do that. And now that's just the way they did it. But you can always modify it yourself. This stuff isn't real cheap. It's a little bit on the pricey side. I want to say for a roll like this that starts out, I'm just going from memory, probably about that thick, probably talking about almost $20, almost $20 or something like that. Maybe you'll get a better deal on it. But I would highly recommend this if you've got a sewing machine. If you open that faceplate and you don't have a reflective source in there, consider adding it. It's out of view. Doesn't detract in any way from the appearance of the machine. And then it takes that LED bulb and it optimizes it even further by reflecting that light down. Because again, when this is closed, if you can visualize it, this is closed, close. The only place that light can go when you turn it on is down. And this accentuates that or optimizes it, or it pushes it up a little bit, makes it better. Yeah. So something to think about, and just give you another option. So, okay.
Kevin and Kathy are both asking if you had a source for your LED bulbs.
I do. I get the LED bulbs off of eBay, and I'll actually show you what the listing looks like. See if I can find the listing. So this is actual. I just reordered more of these because I go through so many of them. But this is the actual listing description right there on top. That top one right there. Now don't be fooled by the price you're seeing. You see $27 and you're saying, hold on a second, pal. Are you paying $27 for one bulb? The answer is no. When you buy these bulbs, they come in a group of, I'm just looking at my notes here. They come in a group of 5. So you buy 5 of these bulbs for around 20 some bucks. Not bad at all. It's like around $4 or $5 per bulb, I believe it is what it comes out to be. And for $4 or $5 a bulb, you're dealing with a lot less stress and anxiety and exhaustion when you're otherwise trying to sew with inadequate lighting. Plus, again, you're reducing the heat factor in your sewing space dramatically. But you can get 5 of these for right around $27, free shipping. Free shipping. You can look at all the particulars there. Oops, I moved my phone. And there's different options when you order through these people. You can get bright white. You can get warm light. I don't know if there's other ones beyond that. I've gotten a combination of both. I like them both. But I think the one on Susie's right now is going to be bright white. So hopefully that helps. Oh, it says it's delivered. I didn't know that. It must be upstairs. They must have delivered them right now. How exciting is that? Nice. Nice. Good. Okay. So hopefully that helps. Yeah. LED bulbs are not created equal. They're not. They're not created equal. Okay. Shut that off. So we've serviced this region of the machine. We've serviced the top region of Susie's machine as well. We've serviced the electrical system. Now we're going to tilt the machine back and we're going to focus on the bottom of the machine. Focus on the bottom of the machine. We can also get to the raceway by tilting the machine back as well. So I don't think we'll have to. Susie said she recently pulled the feed dog cover off, didn't you, Susie? So Susie recently pulled this feed dog cover off right here. Otherwise, there's 2 little screws that hold it in. You can just remove that. You can clean around the feed dogs. You can get that extra lint out. And then this also pops up as well right here so that you can access for taking in and removing the bobbin as well. This just comes completely off. A little bit of varnishing on the back of here, but it's nothing excessive or dramatic. So for right now, I'm going to leave that alone, but Susie and I might wipe it off before she loads this back in her car. In fact, I'll leave this off for right now so we have a little bit more light coming in there. So I'm going to unplug the machine right now. You don't want to be tilting the machine back or maneuvering it a lot with the cord attached because it puts stress on the pivot points of the cord, and you can actually cause that cord to get fragile and to break the wiring inside. So we're going to unplug it, and then we'll unplug it from the machine, and then we'll have access to the bottom very easily. Okay, so we're going to tilt. And on these Kenmores, it's really kind of nice the way they built them. You can tilt it on the balance wheel side. It's not going to hurt the machine. You can tilt it down on the faceplate side because this is all metal. You can tilt it that way. I think what we'll do is we'll probably tilt it towards the balance wheel, and we'll zero in on that first. So we can focus on across the machine that way. So here on the bottom, if you can see it in the shot, we've got a lot of varnishing. And that's to be expected because, again, when you're oiling your machine, especially Susie's original approach before she started watching the channel and became part, got involved with the classes and became a leader and really has gained a lot of knowledge through our time together. She realized more oil is not necessarily good. But when you over oil a machine, it all runs down, gravity and that sort of thing. and then it just ends up fusing to all the different components on the bottom of the machine. You can see right here, especially, it's a real dark brown varnishing on this shaft right here. Over here as well, over here, all throughout pretty much. And again, because our live stream has a limited amount of time, it's not like when I'm with the machine alone and I can spend 12 hours with it. As much as we love being together, as much as we enjoy each other's company, as much as we have an affection for each other and sharing knowledge and getting knowledge, all that, we don't want to spend 12 hours together. Plus, Susie doesn't want to spend it because then she'll be driving back at midnight tonight. That's not a good thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to go after some of this with the Dremel, the brush style thing that we were using before, and just do a general cleanup of it. And the only advantage, I might end up flipping it the other way, I'll tell you why, is the only advantage that we have in having it the other way is then we can turn that balance wheel incrementally as we're going down some of these shafts and clean all sides of it. We don't want to just clean one side. We want to clean the whole shaft. So I'm probably going to take Susie's machine like this very carefully and just rotate it. Just rotate it around. Oh, there went one of your little plates. That's your little plate, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just set that to the side. And again, it's safe to do this because that faceplate is all metal. So now as we're down here, we can rotate this. Let me just see which direction we are. Yeah, we can rotate it. We can watch these rockers moving back and forth. We can watch this shaft over here off of the motor all the way down to the raceway. You can see all those mechanics moving. Back up the camera a little bit. Let's just go after some of this. Let's go after some of this varnishing. We might not get every speck of it off, but I know that Susie's got a lot of tools, she told me, and she can always, before she installs it back in the table, if I missed a little speck somewhere, she can certainly go after it very easily. But before we do this, we're going to do a little bit of maintenance again on our Dremel tool. Again, you want to use rubbing alcohol. You don't want to use an oil. Put a little bit on that rag. We could just as easily, if you don't have rubbing alcohol, you could use a little bit of Windex on here. That works too. Got a nice cleaning agent to it. Get it nice and tight on your finger. Just clean it off a little bit. And again, because of how well-maintained Lisa, because of how well-maintained Susie's machine is, look at that. Very little dirt off of that brush, and we did quite a bit of cleaning with it already. Very little dirt. So now we just look at the varnishing. We just kind of go after it. You know, just carefully work it off of there, right here. And we can certainly just as easily, if you prefer, we could use brushes on it as well, like this. Up here, you can see a lot of brown from that varnishing right here, on this spot right here, on that right there. Just a little bit of brushing has a big impact. You see already it's brightening up very nicely. But again, for expediency during the live stream, we'll just kind of go over it a little bit with the brush. You see the difference? Really quite a difference. It's and it took us just a matter of seconds using this this Dremel style tool to get that varnishing off. And that way, when we go to apply the oil up on this rocker and that, this is going to be free of that varnishing. It kind of loosens up that bindness on a little bit. And this is going to be able to work that much easier in the sewing process. Watch again how it pivots. See it pivoting all the way that way. Now it's going to pivot back the other way. There she pivots again. And now she's pivoting back again. And this is an oiling point that a lot of people miss. I'll just show you straight away. Right at the very top of here, there's a little lip. You can feel it with your finger. There's a little lip right in there. See if we can light it up a little bit as well. There's a little lip right at the top of there. And that's where that oil needs to go. I'll see if I can show you while you're looking at the camera. Right on top of there. Again, just wipe off that excess oil if you get a little bit on there. And that'll be the same on the other side. We'll have to flip the machine upside down, and then we can get also in that little rocker spot right there. Because as the machine is operating again, see how it's rocking? Rocking from side to side. And you'll find sometimes, I've had a couple of Singer 1591s with the potted motors, nice strong motors. And as I'm trying to optimize that machine, I'll go through everything else, and I'll finally get down to these little rockers, and I'll put a single little drop of oil after I cleaned up that space, and all of a sudden the machine will go from running pretty doggone slow. You can just hear it as it's loosening up, just begin to pick up speed and pick up speed and pick up speed and pick up speed. So these rockers are really, really critical when it comes to a machine being able to run with freedom and, full out basically without being held back. So really make sure, and there's lubrication points here as well, all over the place. I'm going to clean it all up, and then I'm just going to show you on the camera as best as I can as I'm lubricating to different points, so you can try to do the same thing on your machine. I'll just leave this little light right here. Hopefully it keeps going.
Sorry? How many Diet Cokes it would take you to talk for 12 hours?
How many Diet Cokes? Probably a combination of Diet Cokes and also water, because soda's a diuretic. So I love sipping a Diet Coke during a live stream. But if I drink too much soda, it actually will dry me out. Just like coffee will, just like tea will. They're all diuretics. So, I probably, in 12 hours, I probably could do 2 sodas and maybe 2 additional bottles of water. That's a great question. And I didn't specifically say it, but ideally when you're operating with a Dremel tool like this that's high speed, right now I've got my readers on. I've got these glasses on to give myself some eye protection. But when these are spinning, especially as they start to wear down a little bit, these little bristles will fly off of here at a high rate of speed. And because you don't have protection on the side, it's possible that one of them could make its way past your glasses and go into your eye, which would not be good. So I usually will also put these on as well, so they kind of wrap around, and this way I've got protection all the way around my eyes when I'm operating a tool like this that's high speed. And you can pick these up pretty much anywhere you want to pick them up. So I'll just show you real quick. Look at the contrast right here on this shaft. We just clean that upper part of it. We wipe it off a little bit. And look at this compared to that. So it gives you a perspective really of the impact that you're able to bring, for your machine. This has received a decent polishing, and this half has not. And again, all of this stuff, if you're seeing it here, it's also embedded. It's embedded in these pivot points as well. And that's why when we treat the bottom of the machine, we're not going to be using a straight sewing machine oil. We're going to be using a higher concentration of kerosene, because kerosene will actually eat away at the varnishing, just like it does with rust. It'll eat away at the varnishing that's into these joints that we might have trouble getting to, even if we go to using a dental tool like this, and we try to get into these joints, say down here. We're only going to be able to get so deep with it, but the liquid is going to run down much further than we can reach with this dental tool. And so it's going to seep in there. It's going to loosen that up and give this great machine new life, which is great news for that motor, because even though that motor is 1.2 amps, it doesn't have to work as hard. It doesn't have to work as hard to turn the machine, which is always a good thing. So I'm just going to quickly go through the rest of this cleanup. Again, I'm not going to do it as thoroughly as I would for a regular service in the workshop, just for sake of time. But you'll get the idea, and then you can, with your machine, you can spend as much time as you want, kind of like I do when it's in the workshop. And also at this point, for some of these angles, I can't get to them as easily with this broom style polishing tool. So I'm going to move now to a more aggressive approach. See if I can find it, that is. I know I got my brush somewhere over here. Susie, you don't see one of those little brushes like I opened up yesterday, do you? Let's see, I was going to peek into that. So these are a little bit more aggressive, and they allow you to kind of bend around corners a little bit more. These are a non-broom style. They're more of a cutting edge, but they're, again, designed to polish and remove debris from metal. And these are a Dremel brand. I cut the top off so I can open it. These are a Dremel brand. They're readily available at your local hardware store, at other places. And they're going to give you a little bit of an extra angle for getting around some of the edges on Susie's machine. You look at them comparatively. That's the difference between the two right there. So I can actually go around the corner now a little bit, get around the backside as well. Yeah, I'm going around the back side of it with the brush because it can reach right around there. There's more. Now, it may be hard for you to see it, but we already have done a significant amount of cleaning. Again, this would take me generally on the bottom of the machine. It would take me to do a proper job, a thorough job, probably about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And we've just done it in a matter of minutes, kind of rushing through it to give you a high level understanding of getting rid of the varnishing. Now we're going to wipe it down a little bit with a cleaning agent, and then we're going to move from there to lubricating all the key points. And also we have to get into this gearbox down here as well. This essential gearbox that really is a critical transfer point for the power that's coming off of this motor right here, and then driving it down to the raceway. And we'll start with a clean cloth. You can see that right there. We're going to start with a clean cloth. Put a little bit of Windex type cleaning material on there. Windex is better than a lot of cleaners because once you wipe it off, you wipe down something, it's not going to leave a real heavy residue on there, which is what you want. So we're just going to do a light wipe over of some of the points that we cleaned. Again, it looks like it's clean, but that residue and powder form kind of stays on there. So we want to do our best to get rid of it. Remember, we started with a clean rag. Gives you an idea. So if we just polished it and left it the way it was, all of this would have stayed on Susie's machine, which is not a good thing, because then as she starts operating, that stuff just floats around, sticks to something new. So we get rid of it because this rag eventually, when I get it dirty enough, it goes in the garbage can, and then it's not going to recontaminate another sewing machine. All right, so let's now move into lubrication. Let's move into lubrication now. And again, on the bottom, I'm going to use primarily kerosene. Primarily kerosene. Let's see it back up a little bit. So again, I'm looking for those pivot points as I turn the balance wheel. Oops, I'm going to do a little bit more cleaning real quick. We got to get the other side of this rocker. See that right there? We got to get the other side of the rocker. We'll do that by turning the machine upside down eventually. I just realized, I didn't take the bobbin out. Let's take that out real quick. Okay, so let's turn this over real quick. And I'm just putting a tiny little drop on there. I'm not putting it on heavy. This is that other side of the rocker right here. This is part of our feed dog drop. Now, I haven't asked questions for a while. Does anyone know what kind of hook system this machine has? What kind of hook system does this have? Does it have a rotary hook system? Does it have a long beak shuttle system? Does it have a oscillating hook system? What kind of hook system are we looking at? And while you're deciding that, I'm going to open up these 3 screws right here. We're going to get our first look into that gearbox so we can see what kind of condition that gearbox is in.
Candido is asking if you are cleaning that with pure kerosene.
80%. Yeah, about 80%, Candido. It's got just a little bit of sewing machine oil mixed in with it. But that little bottle that I have has about 80%. This one right here, it's about 80% kerosene, 20% sewing machine oil, 20% sewing machine oil, 80 sewing machine oil, 20% kerosene. So they're really opposite. They're opposite. This one is heavy kerosene. This is light kerosene. So, yeah, great question. And again, this one is just rubbing alcohol. This one here. The spritzer that I showed you before, the spritzer here, is going to be about a 50-50. 50% kerosene, 50% sewing machine oil. All right, let's take a look in this gearbox. I just asked a question too, didn't I?
Yes.
What was it?
Oscillating or?
Oh yeah, what? Anyone guessing it?
Yes, 2 people guessed oscillating.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant, great job. Yep, oscillating. So yeah, just take these screws out one by one. If they're a little bit tight, as sometimes they will be on the bottom of the machine, are you able to just be right behind the edge of your laptop? There's another torch. They're a little bit tight. You can hopefully hit one of these, and these are available on eBay as well. These torches by Eagle. You just hit it with a little bit of heat. You see right now. So this is the oil that's in there, or the grease that's in there right now. This actually looks better than I would have expected, because to my knowledge, Susie's never opened this up, she said. And I'm guessing that when she had it serviced, when's the last time it was serviced?
It was never serviced. They only replaced a belt.
So they replaced a belt on this machine. They never changed out this gear grease. Gear grease dries out over time. This is in fairly good condition. I'm kind of surprised, but we're still going to change it out anyway and put brand new grease in there for this Kenmore. So I'm going to back up the camera a little bit. This is a little bit of a dirty process. I'm going to see if I can get it cleaned out fairly quick, and then we'll move on.
Kevin H is asking if you knew of a good source for belts.
Sewing Parts Online does a good job on most belts for most machines. And in case he doesn't know, the way you measure a belt is you will basically bend the belt in half, and you measure the length of that and then take it times 2. I'll just let you look at that grease while. And that grease probably started out white or a lighter color. And over time, it picks up all the contaminants, and it just gets darker and darker and darker. Like I said, it's actually in better condition than I would have expected. So, yeah, to measure a belt, talking about belts like this cog belt for a Swedish machine, you basically pinch it together like this and get the length of the belt like this, and then take it times 2, and that'll tell you the length of the belt. And there are belt manufacturers that measure things differently, so just tell them how you're measuring it, and then if they measure it a slightly different way, they'll be able to adapt and get you the right one that you need. But yeah, just generally they just pinch it like this, get a measurement, then take it times 2. So,
Gives you a thumbs up.
oh, cool. Yeah. So you can see the gears right here. We've got critical gears here. Another critical gear right there. They interlace together, and what they do is they spin off of this shaft that we just cleaned, coming off of the motor right here. So the power is transferred this direction through this right here, and then it comes into here, drives these gears, and then it spins up the raceway area. So these gears right now are, they got opportunity to spin easier. So we'll do a little bit of cleaning on them and see whether or not we can tidy them up a little bit. But the consistency of this grease right now is, like I said, it's better than I expected, but it's starting to get stiff. It's starting to get really stiff and kind of dried out as we're moving it around. So this is going to go in the garbage, and then we'll use some of my pink grease to replace it with. Just have to get that cleaned up a little bit better. And actually, I know a quicker way to do it. Let me use a quicker method to show you with a Q-tip or a, let's see here. Oh, you're fine. What you can do is grab some cotton balls. Grab some cotton balls like this. I think we're looking at that now, yeah. Come through here. And you'll have to clean a little bit of the fibers away. Yeah, it's getting to a point. I'm glad Susie brought the machine in, because it's getting to a point now where it's starting to get really thick, which means it's not providing the level of protection that it was originally. But again, it's in surprisingly good shape, and that's probably because Susie maintained the rest of the machine well, and these gears didn't have to work quite as hard to turn the machine. And little remnants of the cotton ball will stick to that. All it is cotton, so it's not going to harm the gears, but we'll get it off there anyway as best as we can to give us a nice cleaning starting point for the new grease. I just I just did a quick little test. I wanted to check grease over the years has changed. I wanted to make sure it wasn't incredibly flammable. So I just hit it with the torch real quick. And the reason I did that is I want to go in here now and I want to make sure these gears are nice and free. Also get rid of any of the remnants of the cotton balls. And so I'm going to hit this area very carefully with a little bit of a torch and get rid of any of the cotton ball residue and also make sure the gears are nice and free and clean. So a little bit right there. It's about 1,000 degrees, so you have to be real careful. There we go. So now we don't have every speck of the old grease off, but we've got it. We just hit it with 1,000 temperature torch, 1,000 degree torch, so that the little bit of grease that's left in there is very soft now. It's not hard and crusty like the other stuff was to some degree. We'll wipe off a little bit more of it now that it's nice and soft. We'll hit it with a torch one more time, and then we're going to repack this area out with fresh grease. You see that little flame? That's from the little bit of cotton swab that was in there. We just burned that out of there, and that's okay. Okay, so let's repack the area now. We just have to wipe off the sealing plate here. Got that old grease still on there. We'll get that cleaned off as well. We'll pack this out with fresh grease, and then we'll move on to a real quick treatment of the motor before we've already oiled everything down here, and then we'll move forward with getting this machine ready so that Susie is able to fire it up a little bit. I don't know what she's going to do, if anything. But it'll give us a chance at least to see her sitting here instead of hiding over by the laptop. And that way you can remember that she's in the workshop. So, yeah, this is getting borderline, this stuff here. It's getting stiff. Getting very stiff. So I'm just wiping that plate off, getting all that oil grease off there. Because again, it's cross-contamination. If I don't get this reasonably clean, I'm going to put this back over with that fresh grease, and all the junk on here is going to go into that fresh grease. So we don't want that.
I asked in the chat if everyone was enjoying watching you do this work as much as I was. And they are. Kevin says, I am. I'll be watching this again in the future. Teresa says, I am, Susie. I'm learning so much.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Vito says, yes, Susie, it's amazing and a wealth of information for our toolbox. Kathy says, yes, such good information.
Oh, cool.
Emma says, this is great.
The other thing I didn't show you is there's actually two pieces here. This outer one is flexible, so it has a seal, so the grease doesn't leak out. The other part is metal. So you want to make sure when you put this back together that the plastic one, the plastic one goes on the inside to seal the grease in this chamber. And then the metal one is on the outside that those bolts are going to be anchoring to. You don't want to be putting those bolts against this plastic stuff that bends. It'll crack. Clean both of those. And what some folks would do, the people at the factory or whoever originally did this did a good job of filling that chamber up nicely with grease. Some folks will just take something like this and they'll put a little bit of grease in there. But again, this is a high friction area. When you're sewing, these things are spinning like the dickens, generating a lot of heat. We had this running, if we could somehow have this running while it's operating, we'd be getting some pretty hot temperatures off of these gears, but thankfully the grease keeps those temperatures down. So as this metal is interlacing with the other gear, it's operating at a safe temperature without compromising or warping the gears. So we're not going to just use this. I'm actually going to get a larger quantity of this, and pack it by hand, get it nice and packed. And I mix this stuff. I'm using an old Vaseline type container, but the stuff I make, this pink grease, is something that it's my own little blend, my own little brand. So I always store it in these. It's just so convenient. Grab a little bit of this and just kind of mix it a little bit. Stuff sits in the workshop. It kind of changes consistently. You want to make sure it's nice and mixed. See what I'm doing there? So now we're going with that soft portion. It's going to seal this off. Put our cover plate, which is metal, over the top of that. Thread our screws in. And you can certainly clean these screws with like a Windex or something like that. These are going to be outside of the chamber. All they are is anchoring these two plates and covers down. So they're not going to, if they're a little bit dirty, they're not going to contaminate the grease in any way. And kind of like when you're putting a tire in a car, you don't want to snug one down excessively tight. You want to get them all started and then tighten them down evenly. And I'm going to go to a little bit bigger screwdriver so I can get a little bit more leverage.
H just said that this is his favorite stream that you have done.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And he will also second it. He said, love this live stream. Learning so much from this presentation.
Okay, so a kind of a quick and dirty way to give a little bit more vitality to the motor. I explained to Susie when she showed me the model. Again, this is a model 1755. That's a little bit cumbersome to remove the motor from here for for purposes of a live stream. It's a little bit cumbersome because you have to loosen a couple of brackets and then pull the motor down, and then it's more than we want to do. So what you can do instead is you can do a little bit of cleanup on the motor with the same stuff that we used on the rest of the electrical system. You just want to avoid this end where the motor brushes are. We got the commutator. You can put a little bit of the cleaner in there, but you want to be conservative because the carbon motor brushes can be affected negatively by too much CRC in the system. So we're just going to put a little bit of CRC in here that will then migrate through the motor, and we'll clean off those different contacts that we can't access during the purposes of a live stream, and still get the motor operating at a higher level. And again, CRC type cleaners do an excellent job of cleaning pretty much anything, but incredibly, they're effective with anything electrical, including a motor. So this is our opening right here where our carbon brushes are just on the other side. They're going to be making contact with the commutator. What I'm going to do is I'm going to spritz just a little bit of CRC in there, and then we'll hit the other side just a little bit heavier. That's away from the motor brushes. Really, really light. Really, really light. And again, this is incredibly flammable. So we're going to be using the compressor again to dry this out before we try operating the machine. I think it was New Zealand or somewhere. I talked a little bit about CRC. They didn't understand the aspect of letting it, wicking that extra CRC out of there. And they started the motor up, and there was a big ball of fire that came out. It didn't damage the motor, but it sure scared them to death. All right, so we're just going to turn this a little bit. We'll do the other side as well. And on this side, away from the motor brushes, you can be a little bit heavier with it, but don't be crazy, just a little bit. And you can turn the machine just a little bit if you're able. That'll rotate the fan. It'll rotate the stack lamentations and the other the other electrical parts. You can clean those a little bit more. Again, not heavy, not heavy. I'm going to take this air compressor, and we're just going to dry it out. I'm just going to manually shut off the compressor for a little bit. You'll also notice that I've got a special nozzle on this air compressor. These are available. You can add them to your own air compressor if you don't have one of these already. They're available at places like Walmart, where it just snaps into the end of your connector. They're only about, believe it or not, they're only about $5. And that way, if your air compressor puts out some pretty high PSI, this one puts out about 175 PSI. So when I'm drying out this motor in that, I don't have this trigger pulled all the way down because I don't want to hit the inside of that motor with 175 PSI. We're talking about copper, and copper is a little bit more fragile. So you only squeeze it a short distance, to dry that motor out. So just don't overdo it. And then I also blew around here a little bit, and you saw I got some lint out of there that was hidden, kind of tucked away as we were going through there, just to get some of that extra stuff, that extra debris out of the machine as well. A lot more cleaning. I would spend another probably 6 or 7 hours on this, but we don't have that time. We've cleaned it as best as we can in the live stream. We've removed a lot of the varnishing. We've done a quick treatment of the motor. We've also done a service on the gearbox as well, which is critical. And then we lubed all the critical points on the bottom of the machine. So the overall, we've done we've done about 20 times better than a sew and vac, even though it's a quick and dirty cleaning on Susie's machine. And she can add additional cleaning when she gets back to Minnesota. Everything's lubed, everything's cleaned reasonably. Motor is treated, gearbox is treated. We've cleaned in the faceplate area as well. And the only other area that we could go after, but I'm not going to do it in this live stream, is we could take off the balance wheel as well, take the belt off and do some cleaning on the balance wheel also. But the machine is turning very, very freely right now, even more so after we treated it. So I think we're in real good shape. We're going to take a quick look at the raceway, do a little bit of cleaning in there, and then we're going to put it together and give Susie an opportunity to see if she wants to try to demonstrate anything on the machine. It's going to be up to her. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up with a service live stream, and then Susie maybe can take some pictures once she gets it home to Minnesota and has a chance to sew on it, etc. So I'm just going to turn it like this. So the raceway on this is fairly easy to take apart. We'll just do that real quick in this live stream so I can show that to you as well. Again, it's going to be an oscillating hook system. And these are basically little flange retainers. You just rotate these out of the way. One up, one down. This whole assembly comes out. See that whole assembly right there? It's got the hook system itself, which you want to be real careful with, so you don't dull that point. That point on here should be really nice and sharp to catch that thread as it swings by the scarf, like this in the sewing process. Actually, it would be like this in the sewing process, oscillating. And this is already looking really good. Susie's maintained the machine real well. we'll just do a little cleaning over this with a little bit of rubbing alcohol, and then we'll put a coat of oil over it, put it back together. And, you know, again, it's nothing close to what I do in the workshop, but we've gotten at least a glimpse into some of the things that I target. You know what I mean? So let's clean over this. We'll swab the inside of the oscillating hook system area as well. And then we'll get this machine back to a point where we can try to use it a little bit. So right now we're running at 3 hours, 11 minutes. We'll see if we have time. I'll check with Susie because she's got to get on the road, and I don't want her traveling too late. We might have to skip the demonstration of the machine, but we'll fire it up anyway and at least run it so you can hear the motor running and the machine running, even if we don't sew with it today. Also, we'll do a little bit of cleanup in this bobbin case as well. Susie, do you have a bobbin for this? I don't remember.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, the extra one's here.
And inside the box is a wound 1/8 thread.
Okay, I'm not going to be concerned about that right now. We'll just show the servicing. I know the machine runs incredibly well. So we'll target cleaning, I think, primarily on this today.
You want to show what you found in the foot control?
Oh yeah, we're gonna open the foot controller too. Absolutely.
That surprised me.
Yeah, so always part of the service when you service the motor, and I talk about this in the live streams already, and Susie reminded me of what I reminded you all of. I love it. You know, we got to service the foot controller too, and we just took a little sneak peek off camera when the machine came in the workshop, and Susie said she was a little bit surprised at what was inside of the foot controller. We'll look at that as well. So I'm just swabbing this hook real quick. Really a critical part of that magic center where the stitches are clean or created rather, where those stitches are created. We're kind of swabbing that. Swab both sides of it. And the edges as well. This edge is going to be turning. You want to make sure that's nice and clean so that it's not sticky. And you can see with little effort, this is what we just got off of it. Now we're going to target the rest of the components in that raceway. Get that nice and tidy as well. So I'm going to be swabbing inside of here. And again, we would normally take the throat plate cover off in that, but Susie says she cleans that regularly to get the lint and stuff out of there. So we're not going to do it right now. Susie's a real good, responsible owner, and I don't feel a need to look at that even. So we kind of swab this area just a little bit. Look at again what we got. And now we've stripped it clean of dirt and oil and grime. Now we're going to apply a light coat of oil to the hook. Also, I've got to finish cleaning this retainer plate as well. Get all that cleaned up there. And then we'll put it back together. And yes, Susie is still awake and she's still here. See? All right. So I'm going to clean this little retainer now that kind of holds the hook pieces together, holds all that assembly together. Top, bottom, all that. Again, this is right next to the brain center for the machine. So we got to make sure that this is nice and tidy so that those stitches can have an environment to be created in without anything holding them back. Also in this area, it's got some little grooves on it. So I'm going to grab one of my little brushes, but look at it, just swabbing only this off. Look at what we already got off. So we'll grab one of my little brushes and we'll kind of go at this in some of those grooves that we might have trouble reaching with a Q-tip. Make sure we get all that junk out of there. And a lot of people ask me, what about using the compressor, that nozzle thing in this area up here, to blow out lint and stuff. I'm kind of opposed to that, because what happens sometimes, especially when you're talking about the pressure of a compressed type air blowing into there, what it oftentimes does is it impacts and compacts that lint that's in there, and instead of coming out, it just gets matted in there with the oil, and then it basically it just creates a plug, almost creates a plug in that raceway space. So I would say go after it with dental tools, other things like that, and clean up your hook system, and you'll be in a lot better shape. So I've gotten this retainer nice and clean as well. So we've got a clean hook. We've got a clean hook system. We've got a clean retainer. We've got a clean raceway up here where the magic's going to happen. Now, before we put it back together, now we've got to put a light coat of oil on there so that everything is nice and slick and it's going to operate well. So now we go away from our rubbing alcohol and we grab either our kerosene or our standard mix type lubricant is going to work very nicely. I'm going to put a little bit in the actual raceway. Just real light. And I'm not going to be concerned about swabbing around and getting it evenly distributed, because as soon as we start operating the machine, that oil is going to migrate through that entire raceway and create a nice slick coating on there. The only place I'm going to go more with the kerosene instead of the regular oil is on the hook itself. I want that to be a little bit of a heavier, longer lasting oil because of the friction factor. You're going to swab it on both sides. And we're just going to insert this back in. You don't really have to lubricate this at all, this retainer plate. We just wanted to get it nice and clean so it didn't reintroduce any dirt and stuff to the raceway. Get that plate in there, seated in properly, and then you rotate these little fins to lock it back in place. Then I always do a little test, just kind of turn it lightly, make sure that that hook system is oscillating correctly. Nice and smooth, nice and clean, ready to get the job done for Susie. Okay. Now we're going to do a little bit of polishing on our bobbin case. Our bobbin case right now has a pretty heavy lacquer of varnishing on it right now. And even though on the inside it's relatively clean, we want to get this off because this is going to be right in the raceway. And that varnishing, if it gets oil on it, that could go airborne and then recontaminate our raceway as well. Also, this little release flange here that you pull so it holds the bobbin in so the bobbin doesn't drop out when you're removing and inserting this. we want to put a little bit of oil on that hinge point as well. Make sure that this is easy moving and that it's, it's got a nice fluid movement to it as well. So we'll just do a little bit of cleaning up on this. On the outside, I can use one of my brushes very easily. Just kind of clean that up a little bit. Then we'll wipe it down and also clean the inside as well. And this already is really nice and clean on the inside. Susie has probably cleaned this over time. So we're just going to take a little bit of, again, this is a high spin up area, high friction. So we're going to put a little bit of kerosene on a Q-tip swab and just swab the inside of this bobbin case to make sure that it's got a nice slick surface for that bobbin to turn on in the sewing process. And you also swab around this stem that the bobbin mounts on as well. And then remember, this slides into the machine on a mounting point. So you swab the inside of here as well, where you can see I've inserted the Q-tip. You can see, even though Susie is very, very good at maintaining the machine, look at all the stuff we just got off with no effort. Got a very busy work surface here. It's kind of fun. All right, so put the machine back like this for right now. Yeah, I think because of time and because of getting Susie on the road to head back to Minnesota, we're not going to do any sewing on this machine, but she can send us some fun little pics or something like that. Oscillate that back. I'm going to put the bobbin case back in. It's nice and clean. Yeah, I'm just going to do a quick wipe over the plate here. Again, this is only a quick process. And again, for chromium pieces like this, you can use a Windex product. Ideally, this has some ammonia in it. You want to use the stuff that doesn't have ammonia, but this will be fine for one time just to kind of tidy it up a little bit and get some of that extra dirt and stuff off of there. So again, this was a condensed presentation showing you some of the recommended cleaning on this Kenmore. We cleaned the electrical system. We did a quick treatment of the motor. We also cleaned out the gearbox from the old grease that in all likelihood is the original grease, but it was a very good grease. It was starting to harden a little bit, but it wasn't nearly as bad as I've seen. So that's also been tidied up. Then we also did varnish removal on the undercarriage, lubricated all that, cleaned up the faceplate, upgraded the lighting system for Susie as well, and then did general cleaning and lubrication using a combination of targeted lubrication and also spritzing lubrication with that spray bottle across the top of the machine. So I think all in all, we've done about 1 million times better than a sew and vac. No offense if any of sew and vac people are watching, but I know you folks have a lot of overhead and you only spend about 30 to 40 minutes on a machine. And we've spent more time than that on Susie's machine to get it running, much, much better than it would otherwise. So we're actually going to give a listen right now. I'm going to get Susie back in the hot seat and let her use that stethoscope just to listen to the machine and see whether or not it's quieter than when we first fired it up a little bit off camera before the live stream.
Giving thank yous for this live stream.
No, you bet. Yeah, my pleasure. So we're going to plug it back in now. Clean up my workspace a little bit. I feel like I'm a wild man over here.
We just made you a $4.99 donation.
Who did?
Kevin.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. Put our cover back on as well. Just give me a second, y'all. I just want to clean this up a little bit. I feel like I'm... Let's get those things out of the way. And again, if you joined the live stream a little bit late, I showed this. These are available at Harbor Freight. They're generally used for automotive purposes. They're a standard type stethoscope, but then they got this radiating type bar on here that when you touch something that's mechanical and running, it really intensifies, accentuates the sound that's deep inside of the machine. So if you got a squeaky sound, if you got a rubbing sound, whatever, it really helps you to zero in on it. And that's what I'm going to have Susie put on and just give a listen to her machine after we've taken it through a quick service and see if it sounds a little bit quieter than it did when we did it off camera when it first arrived at the workshop. So let me just get some more of these things put away. Give Susie a little bit of elbow room. There. Okay, I think we're just about ready. Oh, wait, one more thing. One more thing. I apologize. One more thing. Before we fire it up, let's just real quick open up the foot controller. Susie had mentioned that because I took a peek at it when she first brought the machine in. Really a nice looking little foot controller with this original Kenmore machine. And always do this with the machine unplugged, because remember, this is your gateway to the electricity going into your machine. You don't want to have this open and making contact with anything when it's plugged in. So make sure your machine is unplugged when you do this. And Susie said when we popped this open off camera, she said, "Holy mackerel, that's surprising." So for this, you take out the one screw right there, and then you have to pivot this to release that, and then you can take the back off. Now, for cleaning something like this out real quick and easy, an air compressor is a pretty nice thing. So we'll probably do that on this portion. But I'm going to wipe this off with a cloth and get this cleaned up so that all that dirt and stuff comes off of there. Also, whenever you have the foot control open, you always want to check the connection points as well. Make sure they're nice and secure. Connection points is where the wires are coming in. Just make sure they're nice and tight. And then remember, you also have a mounting point for this center point that distributes the energy based on pushing this. And also a couple of lubrication points. The only kind of lubricant I would use inside of the foot controller that would be safe would be a real light coating of kerosene. Kerosene has a very high flash point. You can literally touch a flame to kerosene and it won't flame up. So using a tiny little bit of kerosene, not sewing machine oil, kerosene, inside of here, if you choose to do that, where it pivots when you're pressing down the foot controller. Also, you can see we've got a lot of varnish buildup on here as well. We might just do a real quick tidying up on that with our Dremel tool to get that cleaned up just a little bit so we've got a better electrical contact. And actually on this one, I'm going to change this. This is not as good as that broom style one. We'll change it out real quick. I'll show you what I'm going to be targeting. See that stuff in there? Oh, what was he promoting? One of the some sort of a product?
If it was real estate or what it was, but it wasn't.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It wasn't very nice.
Good. Great job, moderating team. Yeah, we got good motion. I'm not going to bother lubricating that. So this has already been cleaned. You can go ahead and put this back on again. You have to kind of put this edge in first, so it kind of locks in place. Rotate it like that, and we'll put that screw back in as well.
Kevin is asking if you're using type 1 kerosene.
Yes, K1. Yep, K1 kerosene is has a lower sulfur content, so you want to use that because otherwise the K2 stuff with a higher sulfur is going to leave a residue behind when it dries, and it actually holds the machine back. So, okay, so I'm gonna get out of the way now and put Susie back in the hot seat, and we'll just give a listen to this. And if she wants to listen to the machine with this, it's fine. I'll leave it here. I won't force her to use it because, but it's a neat little tool. I would definitely recommend picking one up if you're trying to troubleshoot the location of sounds on a sewing machine. This does a fabulous job. It truly does. And I'll get a shot of Susie finally over here by the machine again.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. So foot control around the ground. I'll get over by the camera a little bit and get Susie in the hot seat. Oh, that came out your foot controller. That chair is horrible at sliding. It just is.
That ticking is already gone. We heard a ticking when we first.
Not going to be perfect, but it's going to be much improved.
It's a night and day.
Better?
Oh yes, very much so. It had a high pitch noise to it
Go
too.
ahead, fire it up a little bit.
And that high pitch noise is also gone now. That deep humming you're hearing, you couldn't hear that before.
Yeah. Go ahead and throttle her down. So even with the quick version of Workshop Magic, Susie's saying the machine is noticeably quieter. There were some sounds coming out of it that we were picking up on using this, and now she's running silky smooth and quiet. So that's great news.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, folks. Well, we're going to let Susie get on the road, and she promised that she'll send us some pictures of some projects that she might do on this Kenmore. Again, it's a model 1755. Kenmore had like a bazillion models. It's almost impossible to keep up with all of them. But this was a great, well-built machine. So much thoughtful design that they put into this machine, so that Susie's been using it at a very heavy level for almost 50 years, and was getting a little bit of those ticky sounds and stuff like that coming out of it. And now just with a little bit of Workshop Magic, this machine is just ready to go back to Minnesota and say, yeah, let's do some dancing. Let's do some dancing. So, yeah, so God bless everybody. Thank you to Susie for making the drive from Minnesota to bring this great machine that came from your mom, right?
No, it was a gift. But
it was
not
a
from
gift.
My mother, yeah.
It was a gift to Susie back in the day. And it shows us again, don't be a snob. See if I can get in the shot with Susie here. Don't be a snob about quasi-vintage machines. This is from the 1970s. And some of you antique lovers would say, well, that's not a vintage machine. It is. It's been operating faithfully for almost 50 years. I think that's vintage. And not to mention, some of you also in the past were kind of neutral about Japanese machines. These are built really, really well. And the evidence of that is operating it under heavy conditions for almost 50 years with no major servicing, just a little bit of TLC today in the workshop. And I wish you were here. Susie could tell you, she just sounds like, oh, I'm a happy girl. I'm a happy girl. So God bless you all. Who knows? Keep in tune with these live streams. We might surprise you with some other guest VIP person that all of a sudden pops out of the shadows and goes, "Hey, guess who's here?" Ha! So safe journeys to Susie. Y'all say a prayer for her to have a safe journey home. It's like 5.5 hours back to Minnesota. And thanks for everybody. Thanks for the moderating team while Susie was busy doing some of the other things as well, helping me with demonstrating this machine cleaning. Thanks for keeping an eye on things. And you real estate people, advertise somewhere else. Otherwise, our leadership team, they're going to come looking for you. All right? God bless. See you soon. I'll put on some Japanese music, and then Susie will go back by her laptop, type some quick comments or whatever, and we can wrap this up. Yeah. All right. Ha ha. Yeah. See ya. All right. A little bit of Japanese music, and we'll wrap this up. I wish I could hit the right button. They need to have fewer buttons on phones. They just do. Fewer buttons on phones. They've got my vote. Okay, I'm almost there. Getting really close now. All right. God bless everybody. See ya.